Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Lore Ramblings. The name's Adam, and I'm unfortunately by myself for this particular edition, at least to start with. ImpCit's supposed to come here, but he got waylaid. Something, rebel base on Hoth. I don't know. All I do know is that we are going to look at the Imperial Sourcebook for West End Games Star Wars. Let's see how the chat's doing tonight, since I did see there was some activity beforehand. Uh, this does go hard, Packers Tuna. It's really fun to AI generate Darth Vader doing silly things using an AI generator. You can, because he's so iconic, AI is really good at least making him look mostly right. You will find certain control schemes on his suit wrong, but other than that, it's pretty fun. Yep, hey there, Silver Grizzly, Rebel Dice Scum. And because this is a Star Wars book and the property kind of belongs to Disney, and Disney does tend to get a bit persnickety with its IP right, well, much like the Ghosts of Alderaan book, we're going to try to avoid showing too much of it, at least visually. It's nothing on you guys. It's kind of the way they handle the expanded universe, or as they like to call it, legends, makes this kind of odd because, as we mentioned in the Ghost of Alderaan's adventure book, that, well, a lot of that EU stuff is at least recycled, usually using Ralph McQuarrie's dumpster to kind of sift through and find art pieces for. Anyway, let's get into the book that we decided to cover in honor of the new Battlefront re-release. Yes, a 20-year-old game. That's 75 gigabytes for the whole collection, an order of magnitude more than if you just bought the games back in the day and tried to just install them yourself, or just get the original copies on good old games. For cheaper, by the way. Like, even if you bought all of them and didn't bundle them, it would still be cheaper. It is a testament to how terrible the modern video game industry is when it comes to being lazy little assholes relying on your hardware to do their job for them. Actually, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense from the Empire point of view, at least when it comes to their technological terrors. I will actually show, because I think I might as well. I think I will show the cover because it's a movie still, but I always like this movie still. I love the image of Vader framed by the two members of the Imperial Guard. I always did like the Imperial Guard vibe. I always liked how their design was. There's just something suitably mystical about them as much as it is about Vader. It's a very good choice design-wise. I just wanted to show this because, again, this is a million times more iconic than anything that the Rat can currently crap out. You're never getting this again. It's all downhill from here. All right, so let's take a good look at how this thing is organized, since I haven't read all of the West End books. Here we go. It's organized into a variety of things. There's a primer on Imperial power. They talk about comp nor. Imperial intelligence is next, then the military, then their navy, then their customs ordnance, then their land vehicles, then their organization, artillery, blah blah blah. So, oh, here's another bit of good art. I think this one's actually also from Macquarie. So, you know, let's just say that not everything that he made that didn't get used. Actually, it could be Frazetta. I don't know who specifically commissioned this art piece. I just know that you don't usually get art pieces like this anymore, mainly because the technique behind it is out of vogue. Yeah, let's go with out of vogue. Something about water. Actually, this isn't watercolors. This is just kind of old style art. I just kind of love that type of aesthetic. So, the introduction. The Galactic Empire consists of 1,000 worlds caught in the iron grip of tyranny. Using overwhelming armies and vast navies, the Empire instituted a reign of terror among the disheartened and enslaved planets. No world, no system, no race was immune to the terrible machinations of the New Order. But the galaxy was not always such a dark and foreboding place. Once there was a good and pure government called the Old Republic, protected by the shining light of the Jedi Knights, which we saw in the prequels. Yeah, the good and pure government of the Old Republic. Am I right? Yeah, you can definitely tell this was written way before the prequel trilogy was ever even a gleam in the eye of Lucas. But yeah, this is before then. This is before times where they actually had the clone masters be the threat rather than the Trade Federation and the Confederation of Independent Systems, if I recall. But what happens is slowly and cunningly they destroyed the Republic from within, creating the evil and corrupt Empire. An ambitious senator named Palpatine, first name Sheev, Creamy Sheev, proponent of the New Order, declared himself emperor and consolidated his power by destroying the Jedi Knights and disbanding Senate. Wait, hello there!
Hello?
Hello there!
Thing on?
Yes, although you suddenly got quiet. The technological terror is your microphone tonight.
There seems to be a malfunction.
Yeah, you sound like I threw you down the. You sound like I just threw you down the Death Star shaft.
Wait, I do actually.
You sound like Palpatine right before he got blowed up in the reactor core of the Death Star exploding.
I decided to download.
Yeah, you're way too quiet. No one's gonna be able to hear you, man.
Hello?
Nope, no change. You might want to check your input settings for your microphone. I think it might have been intentionally lowered. Hey, Squirrel Killer. Traditional art costs way more to commission. Well, yeah, because you have to pay the menials. Because you do need the art physically delivered to get high quality scans. That is true. That is also why you are seeing more and more people turn to AI. Mainly just because, well, why do that when you can just do it as cheap as humanly possible? Get some guy from Fiverr to do a scribble, or just try to get cheap. Cheap like Emperor Palpatine. That's why he got blown up in the second Death Star. Fucker didn't even finish it. What's wrong with you? But anywho, the Emperor did order a military buildup that was unprecedented in galactic history, and he also designed the Death Star battle station. Although the origins of that thing's creation has shifted hands multiple times. In particular, my favorite iteration of its creation is that a bunch of bugs created it and the Republic Commandos stole it. That's probably my favorite iteration. They also had, I believe, in the early expanded universe works, some guy make it. I know that there's also plans for it in the Dark Forces game because Kyle Katarn is the one that actually gets the documents for the first model. And last but not least, the non-canon Rogue One, Ragu one, has some lady's dad make it because he had to, and then they got blowed up after Darth Vader did a fan film style destruction of like a bunch of guys. But don't worry, that's fan fiction. That's not what actually happened. Well, it is, but you know, they spent millions of dollars single-handedly destroying the IP, which turns it into fan fiction. The Death Star was a galactic theme park formerly known as the Laser Moon. That's a pretty good one. I like that one. Hey, is your microphone still fixed, or do you sound like I still threw you down the well to get eaten by a rancor? Oh shit! I think the rancor did kill him. I'm not hearing him at all. Well then, now it is the time to rule this podcast by myself. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
There we go. That's better.
Really, it's good now.
Yes.
Holy crap!
There you go. I thought you legitimately died. That's why I was doing my Palpatine impersonation.
If actually, no, this actually would fit now. I have died before.
You see, no one's ever really gone. God damn it.
So, what page were we on?
So basically, Creamy Sheev, since this is in the before times, before the prequel trilogy, Creamy Sheev just sets himself up as emperor, and he orders a gigantic fuck-off military buildup, which the EU books later say he anticipated a group of Cenobite, Slaaneshi, Aztec warriors and Tyranid bug ships would come to the galaxy, so he had to make these things while also using them to murder people because it's fun. Yes, unironically, half the reason the Empire was so militarized was because Creamy Sheev had a vision that Pinhead from Hellraiser was going to
I
come to kick his ass.
I think that's somewhat uncertain, mostly because that kind of justifies the Empire.
Oh yeah, it does. But I think there's a book or two that does because the writers, there's a lot of writers in the EU, and not every book was good.
I mean, I would say I don't think he anticipated it,
No, I
and
think he just wanted to blow up people in more creative and horrific ways. I'm surprised he didn't invent virus bombing so he can just watch as they die from like super anthrax or something.
well, do remember in Star Wars they had already had previously um, the was it the gravity well generator or no the mass shadow generator on Malcor 5. Vitiate had killed entire worlds, stripping on them of life. There was XR, I think it was XR Kun had some sort of force drain weapon
Well,
that
yeah, he did
killed entire
because
planet. Then
a lot of
there's
the
the
Sith.
thought bomb.
Well, it's because the Sith kind of they needed to give them more stupid and crazy things to match Creamy Sheev.
Then there's the fact that I think XR Kun deliberately blew up several suns.
Oh,
Then
I
there's the
mean,
Sun
why wouldn't you?
Crusher.
Why wouldn't
Then
you?
there, yeah, Star Wars can get pretty insane.
So the canon version is the Yuzang Vong. The Disney version, which you might actually see them try to use as the new arc threat because they're going to probably recreate the Vong arc. I believe they call them the Grisk in their Disney fanfiction.
So
Yes, the Vong do exist. They're a Disney-fied version called the Grisk, and unironically, one of the things that Dave Filoni was a big angry entitled person about was his precious cartoon show, Clone Wars, couldn't do an X-Files bootleg where Scully and Mulder, I mean Ahsoka and some other guy, have to stop an advanced scout ship of the Vong. I mean the Grisk, because they couldn't use Vong.
not gonna lie, that would be kind of fun if they didn't do Ahsoka, but if they did just two random Imperial
Not happening.
or not or
It's
Republic
Dave Filoni.
officers.
It's not happening. He only has like 20 people he gives a shit about. No offense. It's literally just there's no. Oh no. I'm talking specifically about Dave Wolffucker Filoni, who
Let's
was
see that.
in Lucasfilms before it was sold to white slavers.
Well, then if we want to do something fun. Hondo Anako and Cad Bane.
No, all of them are overused like fuck.
I know, but if I wanted to have an investigation, I'd have the pirate and the bounty hunter.
I'd rather be killed by Nagilum. That's a Star Trek reference. Sorry. I'd rather get killed in a carbonite accident. There we go.
And you say you'd rather rip the ears off a Gundark.
I'd rather get bit by the force destroying bugs that make you go crazy.
Okay, that one I don't know.
It was like a horrible monster thing that they found in some expanded universe books that could like nullify the force because it ambushed and ate, I think, the midichlorians or something.
Mignol?
Something like that. I'd rather die
Yes,
to a
really?
horrible monster.
But did we get to the prologue though of the book?
A little bit. I also talked about the hit new Battlefront series a little bit. 75 gigabytes, as you would for a couple of 20-year-old games. What's that? My copy of Medieval 2, which has 3 entire full body build mods, is still half the size of this thing. Oh my god. Anyway, so Creamy Sheev forms an empire and has a big military. So the source book covers a lot of aspects of the empire. The might of the empire. Now we're in the prologue.
And this is coming from sort of a rebel perspective. And fun fact is the person who it's from, Orhul Hextrapon. he's actually a character that appears multiple times. Apparently, he is behind Leia at the end of episode 4. In the when they're doing the whole ceremony. What
Oh
else?
yeah, the one where Disney eventually retconned because they didn't understand Chewbacca refused it because of his culture. It wasn't because he was snubbed. He legitimately refused to take a medal.
What does he? He appears in retcon episode 4, but then a bunch of other stuff, mostly from the RPG.
Well, I mean, unironically, a lot of the EU's basic stuff was compiled by the West End Games. Not all of it, but enough of it is actually from the RPGs that were later used in books, and vice
and he
versa.
and he appears in the Supernatural Encounters book, which is not official, written by a Star Wars author. That's basically how the fuck do you make sense of this entire plot line? And it's a 900-page book that's a crazy ride.
Oh yeah, the nine is this the 900-page fictive suicide you recommended to me?
Yes,
Oh
yes, the one
yeah,
the
the
one where
one
the
that
guy
made
said
me want to peel my face off. Yeah, I remember
the
that.
one where the author said, "Fuck it, everything made before 2014, we're trying to make sense of it all, even random shit from a French RPG."
So, in the immortal words of a director who is staring in horror at the well, actually no, in the words of this one corporate executive who is appealing to the Wall Street bets crowd. I was just typing. I accidentally mistyped a fucking M on my Twitter. What the hell is wrong with you? Let's play with it. My next question is why.
He was
Sometimes the curtains are just fucking blue because they bought it at the Goodwill for like $1.
initially contracted to write something about the more supernatural stuff in Star Wars, and decided, "Fuck it, make it's
Fucking
over now."
diverge from what I was contracted for. Write a fictive suicide note on par with Ready Player One.
Well, no, it's because no because it was sold to Disney, no longer had anything.
Oh
And he
my
still wanted to
god,
finish the project.
the forbidden word of Disney has made my bowels want to unclench. It's like the black speech of fucking Mordor. Holy shit.
But it's blending things like Tifo Gem, was it Talatni, all that kind of stuff, and THX 1138.
Yeah, because you see what happens is in movies, sometimes directors will put little fun, cute Easter eggs on purpose to their previous films that aren't meant to be taken seriously at all. So
Well,
obviously, there's going to be a crayon eating, dumber than a marine, too stupid to actually be able to hold a gun motherfucker who will stare at the blue curtains and go, "Oh my god, these blue curtains mean much more than they ever could." Meanwhile, the guy's like, "No, motherfucker, I made a comedy called Blue Curtain. That was why I got them at a fucking Goodwill for $1."
we're reviewing a book that's about the fictional government and military operations of a Star Wars empire.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where my life has gone, but it's gone this way. That's for sure.
But so, yeah, this whole thing is to be presented from the rebel point of view. And chapter 1 explains the origins of the empire. And again, this is 1989 when this was released. So this is,
Way before the prequel trilogies. This is
yeah,
actually back when the Clone Wars. So, funnily enough, in the EU, and this is why this is actually why people did occasionally rib the EU. A lot of it was written because after Thrawn, a bunch of books came out. And
actually, this predates Thrawn.
oh, it does. That's
So
even more fun.
they do not even mention the Clone Wars. However, to be
But
quite
the
honest,
clone they do mention in the
yeah,
movie. So here's what happened. Originally, the concept of the Clone Wars by writers are that there was these group of people called the Clone Masters who created giant genetic monster things. And they basically threatened a republic. They also made, if I recall, replicants, like duplicates of actual leaders in the republic to try to replace them. This is then retconned to just be essentially the stormtroopers. Robots versus stormtroopers.
And they did have multiple cloners. So, yes, but the thing about the origin of the Empire is, again, they state that there was 1,000 members state protected by the Jedi Knights.
Hmm.
However, saddled with too massive a bureaucracy. It had grown too large, gotten too old, and corruption had set in.
Which is interesting because this wasn't actually clarified by Lucas seriously. He had, I think, a 9-page essentially outline at this point.
He did want the Empire to have risen because of internal corruption.
Yeah, but it
'Cause-
was barely described, so this is
yeah.
actually nice that they're working with it.
It says a few unscrupulous, greedy senators had started the destructive chain reaction of malaise, which technically is correct. Palpatine.
Hmm.
The corruption
Well,
was
also don't forget his mentor, who was a major shareholder and key user of the Mun banking clan.
Hago Damask. The corruption was too small to be noticed at first, but opportunities grew, and so did the number of senators who were seduced by the lure of illegitimate power and wealth. Which, yes, because he I believe it was, I think, Quat, Iradu,
Yeah, they
a
mentioned
bunch
that
of
they get
other.
into alliance with a bunch of corporate conglomerates. So,
Yeah,
unironically, despite the fact the prequel trilogies weren't a thing at this point, they're still pretty spot on. That is something you got to give credit to West End.
senator turned on senator, values eroded, trust were broken, fear gripped the republic. Corruption fears spread like a mutant disease. At last, the Senate could no longer blind itself to the fact that the republic was being devoured from within. Small, previously routine matters became insurmountable difficulties. Government became remote, unfathomable, often a useless burden to tens of thousands of governed races. The republic was disintegrating, and it appeared that no one could hold it together.
Hmm.
Then Palpatine comes, and he impresses colleagues, rises in power, and slowly gets control of all of the various sides until eventually he takes over.
Which I think is actually really interesting. And
To be, yeah,
and on top of that, I think unironically the outline here is better than what you see in the prequels.
I mean, to be quite honest, though, you could twist some stuff around, and this is the prequels, as in this is the story scene. Just make the division of the Senate be, well, the separatists.
By the way, Squirrel Killer, one of the reasons I'm being a lot stingier with the book in this one is, again, Disney does tend to be somewhat litigious. And while they don't technically own the rights here, it's enough of a shit show that this is more out of precaution. I've done the same thing with D&D books, remember?
Palpatine promised to eradicate the corruption and social injustice of the previous galactic government. Instead, he gave the people a program that's main goal was to subjugate as many planetary governments in the galaxy as possible for the personal benefit and glory of the Emperor.
Actually, do you think I should actually just I'm just musing on that because that is a
I,
point. Hmm?
I say screw it.
Yeah, fuck it, why not? In
Most
honor
of
of
this is just
Battlefront,
text.
yeah, in honor of Battlefront, most of it's text anyway. Yeah, fuck it. We ballin'. We ballin'.
So they say that the Empire is still growing, that a new system is cataloged by the Empire every 207 minutes by the
Which
understaffed.
is I think is interesting. It actually highlights that no, the military is used for more than just repression. It's for expansion.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the things that I feel like the movies and most media doesn't get. The galaxy is big. Like, there is a whole section of the Star Wars galaxy called the Unknown Regions, and it's been that way for thousands of years. No one has really ever traveled there. And that's where we have things like the Sisruk, the Yithians, the Chiss. And then again, who knows how many small empires and pockets of civilizations are existing even in the core worlds.
Oh yeah, especially since once you get near the core, remember they play around with it, but in actual sci-fi, black holes tend to congregate towards a central barocentric mass, the supermassive black hole, which is why places like the Maw exists.
Well, the Maz, I don't think is core.
I thought it was in the core.
To Wikipedia, unfortunately.
It's very unfortunate because Wikipedia used to actually be good.
Well, I mean, if we just stick to the legend section, it probably is fine.
Oh no, they subtly edit that too. If you're wondering, the glorious part of Wikipedia is it's pretty blatant that the head admins, at least one or two of them, are shared accounts owned possibly by Disney's own marketing executives or Lucasfilm's own marketing team. Not their executives, but like their marketing team. Because you'll see like one user constantly editing things on a 24-hour basis.
I see an image from the uh, Atlas, which I know is from it because I have read it so much the spine has been ripped. Uh, and that is in the Outer Rim.
Oh, it is in the Outer Rim. I could have swore there was a similar sort of phenomenon near the core where there's like a shitload of black holes.
You're thinking of Biss,
Ah, yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm thinking of Biss.
which is the Emperor's secret hideout. The Maw is the secret weapons hideout.
Thank you. I got it wrong. Yeah, Biss is what I was thinking of, and it makes sense because again, black holes do tend to gravitate toward. Well, not necessarily. They don't instantly do it, but it's just the way galactic formations work. Funnily enough, I would actually argue the core would be more dangerous depending on the type of galaxy you're in. Uh,
Well,
uh,
the whole thing with hyperspace is essentially the more lanes that you travel, the better trace the route is. So, if it's a very common route that a lot of traffic's through, like commercial traffic, you basically tap into, I guess, the hyperspace version of GPS and plot your course.
which, funnily
Less,
enough, leads to the if you're gonna do an actually fun Star Wars battle, you don't need that stupid hyperspace tracking chip that they put on these things. All you gotta do is just chart the most common hyperspace lane routes and just kind of ambush them there.
I mean, yeah,
It doesn't work all the time, but it does an excellent job if they're not expecting it.
that's exactly it. The everyone has maybe their secret routes or their own coordinates that they go through.
Let's see. Another thing they do is they mention is that yes, the new order. He named himself emperor. He gained ultimate power without any real oppositions. And by the time the senators realized what happened, they were so weakened that he was basically able to get rid of them, which leads to the opening plot of the fourth movie, which is really the first movie, but it's also the fourth movie because Lucas did kind of have ideas for like an entire saga both before and after. Although they were very, very minimal at that point.
So next section, they have someone's writings by his own hand, which is by some sort of servant of the emperor. Straight up says that um,
The
what is it?
bright darkness that is the Emperor. I've always been near him, a servant and a happy slave. It is sufficient enough for me to be close to his power and to feel it reach out to me. That is all I ask for. That is all I am granted. The stars, I stare beyond the porthole and view their glory. They are his. More glorious still, they are my his own hand. Which I kind of like that just because of it really does show some of the intoxicating effects just being near a dark side user, a powerful dark side user can be.
It says he is the emperor. He is the galaxy. Or no, the emperor has recognized this truth, which is that everyone craves the darkness. With recognition comes utilization for his own aggrandizement, for he is the black center of the empire. He is the emperor. He is the galaxy. And I, like so many others, are content to serve in the shadow of his dark fire.
I actually kind of like the again, every time I read a West End Games book for Star Wars, I'm always like, "Oh, oh, this feeling. Oh, this is what it's like to actually remember it being good."
Feels alive.
I Oh my God, my apathy has shrugged off slightly. And then I remember that they got someone like Sharmino Bay Chinoy to make a new piece of shit, and Harvey Weinstein's new assistant to make a piece of shit, and Bob Iger intentionally lying about his earnings when it comes to Marvel and anything else he shut out because he's a piece of shit. And then
Yeah,
the apathy just comes right back.
do you consider it a success or failure to have only doubled in your investment property within 10 years.
So the thing is, that actually I would say is a reasonably good investment. The problem is the way stock market pressures work, especially with investment, is this is actually a problem I genuinely believe is an issue in the stock market. Growth mentality eventually leads into what I call Ponzi scheme thinking, where it is entirely to lie to the audience and investors in the event to rob Peter to pay Paul, so that everything doesn't crumble around. The only difference between it and an actual Ponzi scheme is there is technically a product that you were supposed to release, but the fraudulent actions are all there. The incentives to just commit massive, horrific, but fuckingly huge amounts of fraud is still there.
Huh. Kind of familiar to what happened to the Republic.
Mm-hmm. The only difference is you don't. There's less temptations to take the $100,000 now to burn $2 million later, like there is in the galactic, like there is in real life.
Well, speaking of
I like how
legal,
I killed my own passion again for Star Wars in less than 20 seconds.
speaking of legal stuff, apparently all sapient inhabitants of the Empire, except droids, are considered full citizens. I guess they assume aliens aren't sapient then.
No, they are not.
I'm surprised they didn't include the alien impression. I feel like that was something already
That's because
present.
Sheev. There was. I don't think it was actually hammered home until later books in the expanded universe, but there was an
I
element of it.
I think with Thrawn,
It was
because
primarily Thrawn that brought it about. Yes.
all citizens are. They say that the least restrictive areas tend to be the core and the outer rim. The areas in between have the largest scrutiny.
Also because they tend to be the most. So, funnily enough, in Star Wars, as you spin outward from the core, not in the BattleTech sense, not like spinward as the direction, but the further you reach out from the core, not always, but traditionally, the poorer the region is and the more neglected, because it was either more recently discovered or just because of how the Old Republic worked, you were neglected. That isn't always the case. The mid-rim is a very good example of it. It has some very lopsided investment and a lopsided economy. But it's because of that the Empire has the power it does, because its biggest supporters are traditionally from the wealthier worlds.
Yeah, like for instance, you know why there's a lot of planets that are called Ord, like Ord Mantell? It's because Ord is an acronym. Old
Yes.
Republic Depot. You see how great when world building makes sense?
I know, it's almost like there was a guy who would sit there and eat his salad going, I just came up with Ord Mantell, Ord Galan, Ord Gathol. I'm just making names at the end, like they're not real planets necessarily. Oh, I know. Old Republic Depot. Because what would happen is that this is the thing, even in West End games, they would still have to feed it to George Lucas, who would take a look at it and go, yeah, this looks about right. So, hey, Steven, I have this idea for Indiana Jones, and he goes into a haunted house. I want him to team up with an alien sidekick named Goobo.
Besides the alien sidekick thing, I would say Indiana Jones and the Haunted House
Well,
sounds fun.
I'm splicing two different Lucas ideas. The third movie, he actually, the bit where they're in the mansion in Last Crusade, and it's like dark and stormy?
Yeah.
Lucas wanted the entire film to kind of be a love letter to the House on Haunted Hill and other haunting style manners, where the mystery is trying to get the treasure. It's almost like a bit of a Holmes mystery. Spielberg
Yeah, that
kind of said, yeah, I don't like that. So they didn't do it.
at the same time that does actually honestly sound fun.
If it's done well, I think it could have been.
I'd take like a 30-minute episode of a TV show for that.
I mean, a young Indiana Jones episode where it's like a haunted house thing, like George thought, probably would be really good.
Um, So one other thing, the burden of proof is upon the citizen is to show that he has met all of his fiscal obligations to the Empire.
Yep,
Failure to provide proof is considered guilt.
yep.
Then you have the planetary governments,
So there's the governors. Their imperial agency represent the authority in a single world. It does usually represent an entire system, which includes all of the planets into a star. That's not always the case, but it usually is. It expends the command they have is primarily political and intelligence. It's not really the military. Mainly because this makes sense. In a dictatorship, you usually want to divide power into fiefdoms so that you can constantly pit and divide people based on their conflicts. This actually does make sense. This is something that happens in real life. It would make a lot of sense for Palpatine to do the same. That is why the governors do not have military action and power. It is a Moff, usually.
and the Moffs are sector commanders.
They're half governor, half military commander. They're almost like a warlord.
Which, well, no surprise that the warlord era includes a lot of Moffs.
Mm-hmm. And then there are
Like,
the Grand Moffs, which are even greater than them. The equivalent of a great marshal, so to speak, or people that manage entire regions.
and then you have servants of the Empire, his advisors, to be like Sate Pistage. Those weird old guys that I think are only seen in they're only in one scene in episode 6.
Yeah, they're the old people, and I think you see a few of them in episode 3 where Palpatine does the monster mash on his throne.
Well, what happened to the Umbaran that was with him? You know, the bald chick.
Well, where do you think Rey's father came from?
Well, I'm talking in actual lore.
I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. Either
Well,
that or he ate her in a dark ritual. Let's be fair.
or Masamita. Where did that guy go?
No, I got it. This feels like something Palpatine would do. He put them in a recreation of Jabba's Rancor pit, and then just threw a little knife, like a little toilet shiv, like a shard of metal, and then told them to fight to the death, and the winner would be his new advisor. Like it would be his loyal advisor, and then he just kills the other one because it entertained him.
Then you have his.
Like that's the thing with Sheev. You can kind of do whatever you want with him, and it's reasonable for the character.
Then you have.
He's kind of like the Joker, but with more rationality.
Oh, that's most Sith Emperors. Especially my more favorite one. I think it's Darth Ruin. He was the guy who rediscovered the Sith in like 2000 BBY and not only restarted the Sith, but also believed nothing else in the galaxy existed besides him. Now, how does that explain why he trained people? Yes. The man was insane and a former Jedi.
I love the mental image of him openly declaring, "None of you are real. I am the galaxy. The galaxy is me. QED. I'm a big brain in space."
The Imperial Royal Guard, handpicked detachment of Imperial stormtroopers, which I believe, yes, has been reintroduced before in other expanded universe properties.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the expanded universe borrowed from West End games and vice versa.
Um,
I'm not decrying West End. I'm not decrying that, by the way, because
Yeah.
the thing is, West End, they produced so many splats and descriptions that I really do. Even if you still, for some reason, care enough about Star Wars, I would recommend getting a bunch of these splats. They're really good. Not necessarily adventures are all good, but like the stuff on their source books and galaxy guides are fucking great. But yeah, the entire Royal Guard is never sent on combat missions. There's only a few that are sent into combat on a rotating basis, which keeps them fighting trim.
and I believe their armor is based off of the Sun Guard,
They are.
which was used by the Sith, and also similar designs to the Mandalorians.
Yep. Primarily the Death Watch. Yeah, they mentioned specifically they're based on a combination of the Death Watch and Sun Guards for their ceremonial uniform.
Wait, in this?
Yes, right
Oh
here.
my!
They do.
Holy crap!
Where do you think it came from? It came from this book.
I didn't know. I thought the sun guard thing was later.
Nope. So much shit from the expanded universe was made by West End, it's not even funny. Also, yes, the Imperial Royal Guard are nothing to fuck with.
Was there ever a Darth Justice or Darth Harmony?
There probably was.
I mean, the only good guy. I mean, Revan.
Yeah, Revan is the best example of this.
Well, no, there was also, I think, Darth Gravitt, who actually fucked over the rule of two Siths plans by realizing, what if I include a bit of the light side in my dark side?
Yep.
And they said, fuck it, gotta destroy everything. He actually probably did more damage to the Sith than
Yeah.
any other Jedi before. Uh, but then there's the Emperor.
He legitimately pretends to be old.
Even though I think he's 70 or so.
No, he's old, but like he pretends to be like, oh, ow, my bone marrow.
I don't mean good Sith, you mean one with the least subtle in their naming.
That would probably be like, well, wasn't there what was it? Darth Nihilus is a pretty good example of that.
Well, remember, he was a literal fucking void.
Yeah.
Let me see. There's
I,
Darth Sanguis.
I love how I love how the Emperor has a command of 11 dice. That is
Oh, Darth
amazing.
Millennial.
Hey look, Creamy Sheev has a 12 dice in bureaucracy.
Darth Millennial, three-eyed mutant.
So the grasp of the Empire. The Empire has changed in ways systems interact with it. Yep. There's a larger degree of control. It intervenes in the politics of worlds quite often. And this is actually one of the main drives for the Rebel Alliance, actually. The controlling nature of the Empire is driving people off that traditionally benefited from the hands-off nature of the Old Republic. Which means, funnily enough, some of Sheev's old allies actually turned on him specifically because, wait, what? You mean I gotta... No more kickbacks? And then he usually killed them, but a couple escaped.
The three-eyed mutant does sum up the average millennial nicely.
Control of information. So there was a free flow of information during the Old Republic. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, the HoloNet's been clamped down.
Oh yeah, it's filled with propaganda. Which also explains exactly why Palpatine was able to sell the lie that the Jedi were a myth.
Well, not only that, but how many Jedi were there?
So here's the funny thing: until the prequel trilogy, they were supposed to be an order that was slowly dying out. There wasn't really that many of them, and then the expanded universe kept adding more. And I think West End Games actually is partially responsible for this because I believe they have quite a few invented Jedi as well.
Well, no, I mean, like, how many Jedi existed at all?
I think by the time of I'm not gonna be able to come up with a good number, but I think it was only a couple tens of thousand, and that was mostly just because yes, their temple complex on Coruscant was big, but it still would have probably only held like anywhere between 10 to 100,000.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot, but in a galaxy that large, especially since so many of them are on missions,
most people never saw them, and
the only ones that would have regularly would have been those on Coruscant, aka it was Imperial Center.
You could easily wipe away that memory. Like, for instance.
Oh yeah, 10,000. I was right with my initial estimate. Yeah. There's
How
not many.
How many of us truly remember pre 9/11 airports?
That's a good question.
With enough, people raised up today don't know what it was like back then. It can only exist in memory.
Same with how people will not really remember the television static or snow anymore, because that's not how it works anymore. Yeah, 10,000 or so Jedi, it's not many. Although the funny thing is, because there's only so few Jedi, it makes all of the surviving Jedi that keep fucking appearing, which Disney, by the way, is actually, I would say, as guilty as the EU, if not more, because they did it more often than the EU did, at least in terms of time period. I mean, at this rate, at this point, you're gonna tell me all the Jedi faked their death and that Creamy Sheev was right, and it was a conspiracy.
I mean, to quite honest, most of the Jedi that survived died in probably the few years after because they were all deciding, let's go after the Sith.
Hey, I have a great idea. Let's try to murder the Chancellor in cold blood without explaining shit.
But he's controlled the Senate and the courts.
Yeah?
You can't hold a trial for him. Everyone's corrupt.
Why don't you just, I don't know. Why did you have to do a dumb sword fight when you could just, I don't know, have Mace Windu, like, teleports behind him, say, nothing personal, motherfucker, and cut his head off?
Can he do that?
Probably.
I know he has the Shatterpoint thing, but I don't think he can stop time or teleport.
It's Samuel motherfucking Jackson. He can do what he wants. Hey, remember how in Tartakovsky he was able to single-handedly kill an entire droid army by just using his mind?
And fists.
Hey, remember the time he destroyed General Grievous's lungs and turned him into a Saturday morning cartoon villain? By, I don't know, giving him a minor lobotomy as well?
Well, I mean, he did not. I thought all he did is just destroy his breathing apparatus.
He did. Although maybe you could argue because his lungs were destroyed, General Grievous suffered hypoxia. So the General Grievous you see in Episode 3 and in Dave Filoni's fanfiction with George Lucas's permission, maybe that Grievous is the product of severe traumatic brain damage. Congratulations, you're fighting a legally retarded disabled man.
I mean, then again, he did have most of his body blown up before he became a cyborg. I'm pretty sure he suffered brain damage.
So they're not only fighting a cripple, but they're fighting a person with severe cognitive deficiencies. Oh man.
The thing is, I don't think Mace Windu would give a shit. I'm pretty sure he'd kill a child.
I think he did actually advocate killing Anakin.
I think he just said not to be trained.
Yeah, but basically he had no one to turn to, so he was consigning him to starve to death on Coruscant.
No, I think they would have just sent him back home. Which actually would have been a death sentence. It's Tatooine.
Yeah. Reminder, Mace Windu also would rip literal babies out of their parents' hands if he thought it would save the Order. He did that at least once. And if you're wondering why he's like that in outside of the movies where he's kind of boring, that's because Mace Windu actually does play around with the dark side a little bit. His entire concept is you have to know evil to be able to defeat it. So he plays around with it a little bit, at least to kind of understand the mindset and to fight against it.
And remember, purple,
blue,
and red. But though that was just because he asked Lucas, "Can I have a purple lightsaber?" And Lucas just says, "Sure."
Why not? But it makes perfect sense if you think about it. It makes sense for the character in the books. Basically, the whole thing about Windu, besides Shatterpoint, is he invented he also is one of the few inventors of a new lightsaber form, which is based on the aggressive form, but even more so since it channels just a shade of dark side into you. Like, you use a little bit of it. Not a lot. Like, the whole point is you're kind of constantly on the border between accidentally falling a bit.
But continuing on,
I'm sorry, Mace Windu is a fascinating character, much more so than.
Well, this is Tarkin.
God.
Who decides, you know what's the right strategy for reducing resistance? Not talking to them, placating them, building some sort of system that prevents rebellion and treats the citizens in a way that benefits them. Rule through fear.
Yeah, that's actually Tarkin's legitimately, that's his genuine political idea. I mean, it could be worse. Tarkin could have been like, I have an excellent idea. Planetary lobotomies.
Your Majesty, it has been my contention that the average citizen has no graphs of numbers nor a head for calculation. I maintain that one of the reasons for the effectiveness of a Star Destroyer is its size. When citizens look at a Star Destroyer and then look at the craft, which might be made available to attack them, even the best minds among them wishes to reject the notion rather than approach the problem tactically. There's also the fact that there's another reason you could use the Star Destroyer. Land on top of the protesters, which he did.
All the time.
And was promoted for that.
Also, don't forget his solution to dealing with a planetary revolt was to basically glass it until almost no one lived. Before the Death Star was invented, basically Tarkin advocated for glassing a planet a la Halo. He would just orbitally bombard it until everyone on the planet was fucking dead.
Sweep away the last remnants of the Old Republic and let fear keep the local systems in line. Fear of our ultimate weapon.
Also, the Death Star was his baby. Yes, he had scientists make it, but the concept and design, at least initially, was his own. At least before the expanded universe changed the origins like 4 fucking times.
I feel like a good retcon of that would be like they built individual components and then it was all combined. Like Geonosians had the idea for the shell of the station.
Or maybe the Geonosian concept was it's a terraformer array. Like, let's say you take a planet like Hoth, right? You use a wide diffuse laser beam to slowly heat up the atmosphere. It's the opposite of solar mirrors, where you just kind of put a low-level heat lamp laser on the planet.
Also, this Jedi ableists confirmed, which is true. Remember, they decided, no, Anakin, you cannot exist without with one hand. You have to have the other one. We're going to give you a robot hand. Phantom limb syndrome be damned.
Yep. Hey, remember when Obi-Wan chopped it off and left him to die in a fire, and it was up to Creamy Sheev to fix him? The Empire, what can I say? The Empire is actually better at treating the disabled than the Republic sure as fuck ever was.
Well, to be fair, actually, you know what? You're right. Because I remember this. The general from Episode 5, General Veers, he got crippled, and they gave him a floating wheelchair.
Yes, they did.
And I think he died at the Battle of Coruscant. But,
he did, but still. I'm just pointing out the Empire is better about handling disabilities than the Rebel Alliance ever was.
They had fat people. They had women.
And if you were really good, even an alien or two.
They let the blind become stormtroopers.
Oh yeah, they actually seem to only recruit from people with severe myopia.
But on to the next
It actually turns out Jango Fett lied on his eye exam. And the Kaminoans were like, well, we have to keep to the template, do we not? But his eye results are 2070.
Never tell me the odds.
No, and the Kaminoan simply says, we stick to the template.
Can Veer's wheelchair work in a dungeon? It's floating, so yes.
Yeah.
So the next chapter is Compnor, Commission for the Preservation of the New Order, which is the political propaganda unit. It was a social gathering for idealistic young beings who saw in the New Orders a deliverance from the chaos in the dying days of the Republic.
Yeah, because again, the Republic was in pretty shit shape by the time Palpatine did what he did.
One of his advisors, Kruya Vandron, saw the potential worth of a populist movement which should be molded into a useful political tool. Oh, isn't that relevant?
Yeah, and they came up with this in the 80s.
Overt encouragement and discreet funding were provided, giving Compnor the appearance of a spontaneous organization enjoying phenomenal growth. Oh my god.
Are they
Yeah,
talking? They're literally talking about modern American politics, and it's really fun.
Compton, we're a grassroots organization. And so then they have the select committees, attempts to build the ethic of the new order into life for the average
Actually,
galactic
no.
citizen.
They have a chart for how Comptonor works too, as well.
Yeah.
Emperor, the advisors are above all of them, and then there's the select committee, which is right below the advisors,
You have SAG, Progress, Improve, CompForce, ISB.
which is Intelligence Bureau.
And don't you like the direct newspeak kind of language?
Yeah, again, West End Games definitely thought through the Empire. I legitimately do think that they consulted people who worked on prior because there were a few Star Wars books before then, not many, but they probably consulted them as well as George a little bit.
SAG actually is the sub-adult group, so this is the Hitler Youth.
Oh, I thought SAG specifically referred to the other evil organization that currently exists in California that is planning to destroy themselves with more strikes.
Oh, they're doing more strikes?
Well, technically, it's the Teamsters that are willing to commit mass suicide for their workforce. Because let's keep in mind, trade unions only benefit the leaders. The good majority of them get absolutely fucked when they try to strike when the getting's bad, and the
Uh,
getting is very bad.
so yeah, they have SAG Education, SAG Recreation, Motivation Recruitment, the Coalition for Progress, which is just the bureaucracy.
The best part is Coalition for Progress is related to the Committee of Progress that was from the Ottoman Empire.
Oh, interesting.
Slight reference to the Young Turks there.
So you have
The movement, not chunky,
yeah.
not Chunky Yogurt's false attempt to pretend he's a socialist at all.
They probably would be a good propagandist.
As long as there's someone to clean up his messes, sure.
Well, no, it's like the fake opposition would be set up. Like you have Star Wars Tucker Carlson, you have Star Wars Cenk Uygur.
I'm just now envisioning an AI voice debate where Tucker Carlson interviews Creamy Sheev about the Death Star. So, why did you feel the need to make another one? Because I figured that the original one did an excellent job.
Oh, well, you see, it all started back during the Jedi Order.
It all started. It all started back in the days of the Jedi Order, back before even the Sith were a thing. Well, what does that have to do with blowing up planets? I'll get to it. You have to understand the concepts before we get into it, though.
You see, you need to read this 900-page book. It outlines everything.
I commissioned someone to write this 900-page book. I then had them executed for heresy.
And speaking of books, the art group. It's the most despised within Progress because it's, well, a bunch of bureaucrats deciding what is art.
I actually like that Palpatine legitimately has a bureau that. This is actually a fun little nod to the Nazi Party, funnily enough, because they had an entire committee that decided whether something was degenerate art.
Yeah, no, this is straight up.
Very cute.
Yeah, saying that the intense red of the wavelength given by text on these hollow panels has given the name Scarlet to any particularly unfavorable review. Drawing a Scarlet is now a guarantee of success on scores of worlds.
Which is
Which,
also why the
yeah,
Nazi Party got rid of their art division, because what happened was their opponents, and actually the common German, usually found these subversive pieces much better than the ones proved by the party line. So they had to quietly rescind it as a concept.
then there is the science group. Science does much more than report on the politically acceptability of scientific research within their sector. They actively coordinate research and development efforts towards the new order. Many of its members are scientists of firm conscience who resisted Comptonor's pressure to concentrate on projects with direct military applications. But we're going to make a cure for space cancer. No, you're now going to make a virus bomb that spreads space cancer, but it's not a virus.
I like the
Make it
idea.
work.
No, I like. I like the idea of using a retrovirus to cure cancer. But the problem is I would prefer it if you have turned the retrovirus to give people cancer. What? Why? Because it would be an effective weapon of terror.
Watch as they slowly die over several years. And
I,
we'll and we're going to modify galactic policy. We'll no longer provide medical assistance to these people. But wouldn't this just make them more actively resist?
they already are. There's no point. They signed their death warrant the moment they allowed an unflattering image of me looking like a monster movie to be displayed on live television on their planet.
Yes, we've tracked down these rebels. They go under the acronym TMZ. But next up is commerce.
Which makes sense. You would probably have your finger in the commerce pie. Fun fact: in the Disney fanfiction universe, Emperor Palpatine is so bad with money, despite being a senator from Naboo and from a rich family, because he's from a rich family. Although I don't think they've read any of it. Actually, I know they haven't. It's fine. But anyway, he was so bad with money, he needed a very strong, stereotypical person. You know what the type I'm talking about. You can envision what they look like. You can envision the hair color. You can envision their frame. You can envision their texture, their cultural background. You can see it all. I don't have to explain what they look like. But what they did was they were the emperor's personal economic tard wrangler.
Honestly, that probably is the most appropriate term for an economic advisor in the Empire.
The difference is that like he was completely incompetent in every way, and that person was responsible for the empire working.
Also, cyanide, screen actors are pretty subadult, or is that they prefer subadults?
The only thing I'll actually say to that question to answer this is yes. Which question? Yes.
Well, then the other branch for Comp Nor, education.
Which is just making sure people know what the official history of the planet of the galaxy is supposed to be.
And justice.
Which is a funny oxymoron.
They're to provide a uniform legal code which would apply to the entire empire. Oh fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible.
Oh yeah, it's genuinely terrible. Like, unironically, a good example of why this wouldn't work is there's a reason why different regions of the United States, including counties, have their own laws on the book. Because there are certain circumstances either in the community's economy, or due to historical precedent, or due to actual culture, that you need to have laws like that to deal with it. There is actually a law in Kentucky, for example, where you had to fire a pistol in midair if you rode it on a horse. It was the equivalent of honking the horn. It was to announce that you were making a turn in a crowded cart street. That is a weird example. Another fun example was there is a city in California that during the 1950s actually put in a law that stated it was illegal to detonate a nuclear warhead on site in the town.
And this was probably because of. Actually, no, this still doesn't make sense. What the fuck would that do?
I think it's because here's a hilarious fact that the Fallout universe should have done. Las Vegas actually got the term bikini, and the term bikini in the fashion wear actually got its start in Las Vegas, specifically because they had tours where you could watch people blow up atomic bombs via testing from a tower. You could actually pay money during the 1950s to watch nuclear detonations in Las Vegas. Which I think is really cute, and you could have easily put something like that in the Fallout universe somewhere.
I mean, you can watch a satellite
Yeah,
blow up stuff.
but if you think about it, wouldn't it be like a neat idea? Like you have a town where the whole quest is the guy wants to make a tour showing people like nuclear explosions with those mini Davy Crockett nukes for the bazooka.
Oh yeah. Oh, that could be fun.
Yeah, it's like
Someone
it's just a
mod that.
fun quest. It's like a fun quest where a guy's like, I need like the town's dying, the mines have gone dry, and I heard that old Mr. House fella, they're back in the Vegas in the old days. They used to show off nuclear detonations to get people to show up. Something like that, you know.
So then you have the Coalition for Improvements,
Yeah,
which suggests developments to the rest of. Actually, I have no idea what they do.
don't worry, Compnor doesn't know what they do either. That's the point.
I think these are just general developments and redesigns.
No, I like the idea that there is an entire bureau that not even Compnor knows what the fuck it's supposed to do.
Also, I do like that image of the Comp Force Trooper.
Oh yeah, this is actually a slight nod to, funnily enough, originally there were supposed to actually be scenes where you showed Imperial soldiers.
Because remember, the Stormtroopers are not the main army.
They were not supposed to be.
What would you put them? Like more like Marines?
I would put them in between something between what the Spetsnaz were supposed to perform at and the Marines. Kind of an intermediary between the Marines and the SEAL team, like U.S. Army Rangers or something.
So yeah, you have Comp Force, which why does a bureaucracy needs a military?
Well, it makes sense if, again, you're reminded of a personalistic dictatorship. There is a reason why in Nazi Germany, the Luftwaffe actually had army divisions.
Also, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be the SS. You have volunteers coming from SAG Group. They are fanatical to their adherence to the principles of the New Order.
But yeah, Comp Force is another force for the Emperor. The Emperor also probably allows this. This makes sense. You want your different parts of your government to try to have rivalries with each other. This would be a good way to threaten stormtroopers.
Apparently, Canada had laws against witches.
Yep.
Still in 2015.
I'm surprised that I'm not surprised it took them that long to abolish the witchcraft laws, because they were too busy trying to find ways to legally kill the fat and poor people in the country without people complaining.
But so Comforce has observation, assault. Oh, wait, observation. That's the commissars.
They're part commissar, part scout.
Assault is just your basic military. However, they completely lack training.
Well, yeah, because they're essentially security for
Right.
Compnor.
They have a higher than necessary casualties and fail to succeed in objectives against well-trained troops.
Actually, your reference to them being based on the Schutzstaffel is correct, because that's actually very similar to how the Schutzstaffel as a whole, when they put army units on the front, that's about how they performed. Except there were exceptions, but most of the time it was Waffen SS units that were the exceptions, because they usually came from actual veterans that fought in wars that actually had experience.
Yeah. Oh, the assault arm is a recent addition. Some of them are lasting long enough to train past their skills. These veteran units gain a fierce representation, so that might be it. Although I feel like Waffen SS and the Empire would be some stormtrooper variant.
In this case, my thinking is they are either in. I would probably go with essentially Hitler Youth Division.
Yeah, no, pretty much because they are trained from the Hitler Youth.
Hitler Youth Division / SS. Like they are capable of doing security tasks, but they're not very good as soldiers.
Then next up is the ISB, most famously put to the silver screen in Andor.
Which, funnily enough, you can tell that they didn't want to make a Star Wars script. They had a crime noir thriller in mind.
Well, the thing is, they reference
no, they had more an interest in a political thriller. That's why you barely see any aliens, except for the bare minimum.
So the ISB
They're not interested. They were not interested in making a Star Wars property.
So Imperial Intelligence is more military. ISB is more political.
Also, from what I remember, the ISB is run by a real bitch.
Isard.
Mm-hmm.
You have surveillance, which recruits from everywhere. You have investigations, internal affairs, interrogation, re-education, and enforcement.
Yep. Funnily enough, I want to cover a little bit in internal affairs because I saw some interesting slang. Internal
Yes, I did
affairs
too.
have an amazing collection of terms to differentiate between the ways they conduct an investigation. To audit is to conduct an investigation where the target and everyone around him knows the investigation is being conducted. Finesse is a way of investigating by asking their help and rooting out other traitors in the hope they'll give away incriminating evidence themselves. Scattering is the technique of grabbing someone against whom you have no evidence and then watching the behavior of their associates to see if they any react in suspicious ways. Crust busting is harassing a suspect in the hopes he'll do something criminal. Cultivation is allowing a suspect against whom you have evidence of a minor wrongdoing to proceed unhindered so that you can catch them for a larger crime. While irrigation is to covertly stage events so a cultivated suspect has a greater opportunity to commit a crime. Which, funnily enough, is a lot of shit that our actual intelligence agency does. Funnily enough, especially during the 2000s and 2010s, they would intentionally try to feed crazy people and get them ready to join like crazy far right militias and like terror organizations so that they can just either get them all because they sign up, so because they're kind of a mole, kind of not really, or to just allow you to do a horrible thing so that they can then crack down on the rest.
Yeah, actually, that brings up the next phrase. To Jabba is to set a suspect up in a no-win situation in which he must, at least technically, commit a crime.
Yep.
Internal Affairs then promises to forgive the crimes if the suspect does a few favors. Favors commit more crimes will be forgiven if the suspect does more favors.
I like how that's a nod to. That's also how Jabba the Hutt pretty much has some of his more interesting enforcers. Essentially, he bails them out of a jam, and they can't ever repay him back because he constantly puts them in scenarios where they owe him more. I think that's partially how Han Solo got caught in his orbit.
Probably.
I
Well,
forget.
he did owe debts to him, and he did also lose that spice shipment.
Yeah, yeah. If I remember right, specifically, Jabba forgave that debt in exchange for having to do an even bigger job.
Well, no, he said no. Han needed to pay back for that job. He said he was going on a run and was going to give him the money back plus a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Also, from Not Nito, used to. Yes, used to.
uh, there's low-key suspicions that things like Twitter and so on are being used as farming tools by intelligence agencies to artificially drive culture. Yeah.
I mean,
Same with
they're investigating
corporations.
everything.
Corporations do the same thing.
So, Chapter 3 Imperial Intelligence, which straight up just comes from the Old Republic. This is the Old Republic's intelligence.
It is. Which I think is this nice nod to the NKVD, which was based on Okrana.
You know what I do like about the Empire? Is how much it draws from all of the bad parts of human history.
Well, the best part is George Lucas didn't think of half of this shit. This is all the sci-fi writers and fans that came up with these interpretations.
So you have people rain on that it's supposed to be like a parody of, what is it, the U.S. with a splash of Nazism, but it also has that British,
Oh
the
no,
British uniform.
at its core, I genuinely think it's more British than American. Because most of the officers have received pronunciation that sounds much closer to the English tongue than it does that of the American.
It's more universal in its villainy, as in it's not coming from one point of view or one historical aspect. Same thing with 40K. It's just evil.
Yeah. But you see, 40K is evil because they don't allow women to be forcibly abducted as children, shoved horrible genetic templates into their body so they can die instantly because their chromosomes don't match the mutant DNA that was inserted into them.
Now the Empire will just do that. The Empire is willing to completely do that. What this will kill them 100% of the time. Start the next trials.
So yeah, the Ubictor was the original incarnation of the ISB. It has changed somewhat over the years, but it's still the same old Republic spy agency.
So you have from the Ubictor, you have the sector, Plexus and their cells, and then the various other branches: Int, Org, Analysis, Bureau, and Intelligence.
I love the new speak. Femarine's mostly a meta thing and used as a cudgel by people trying to essentially complain about nothing because they forget about the sororitas, or they're angry that the sororitas aren't called Space Marines too.
The only thing is, they did make 2 models, but they never sold.
Yeah, because they don't give a shit. That's the other
And also
thing.
because, holy crap, they looked ugly even back then.
Mm-hmm.
Games Workshop has only recently discovered how to draw faces.
I know, it's actually a miracle that they even got as far as they fucking did, let's be fair. So, the Emperor, and from there's the Grand Moffs, which are slightly below, which actually shows you that ISB technically is under the Emperor and doesn't have any influence on them, but as you do when you make a personalistic dictatorship, they constantly fight with the Moffs, they constantly fight with Comp Nor, because that makes sure that Palpatine does not get fucked by someone who is charismatic. It will kill them 100% of the time, call it a Sith ritual, and proceed. Yes. That's another thing I could see Palpatine do. Just like, oh yes, it's a Sith ritual. And then you just see him laugh as they die in the most brutal way fucking possible. Yeah! I needed that entertainment. So, Vader, how are your children? They're dead, Master.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Sorry about that. I forgot you killed them.
I could see him doing that. I remember how you killed your wife?
I've remembered every time I sleep.
Man, she was a hot piece of ass. Oh, when you were in the war, you never really got up to the Senate. The whole Senate.
No. Okay, remember the the Ahsoka Tano shitpost? Change it to Emperor Palpatine describes Padme.
And she was a good friend. Oh no. Have you ever heard of Padme the bicycle?
Why, I and the rest of the Senate, we used to go gangbuster on her for hours. You should see how she could take a Trandoshan. A Trandoshan. No hesitation at all. And you can feel Vader just like spiraling into a rage, and just Palpatine smiling more and more because that loathing and hatred is just blossoming. As he continues to say it, like he doesn't fucking stop. Because that's the type of guy he is.
So what you gonna do? What you gonna do, Vader? And he just zaps him a little bit. See? Shuts you down, doesn't it? Nice try. Now listen as I talk more about how much of a slut your dead wife is.
No. And then he says, "Good." No. He claps his shaking, staggering form. Good talk. We'll do this next week. And then he does it exactly next week. He wasn't fucking with them.
But onto... They take a whole 2 pages to describe the Imperial Sandock.
Which I think is neat.
Yeah. Like, straight up explaining, what is a phase cycle?
Yep.
What does all this mean?
By the way, this isn't actually needed for a GM. This is just for, like, if you're a genuine fan of Star Wars. Like, you can definitely tell, unlike the current garbage being made, they fucking care. There is a passion and fondness for the material that you're not going to see in any IP because they're too busy trying to make subversive garbage that won't sell. And then they wonder why no one remembers who they are. Or if they do, it's like the arrow dart frog, which instantly kills anyone that eats it. Or like how birds vomit at the sight of a monarch butterfly.
So we get the
Not joking,
Victor.
if you're wondering, monarch butterflies are so colorful because it makes birds go, oh fuck, those are disgusting, don't eat them.
Hmm.
Yes, a couple die, but the birds vomit and wish they were dead for long enough to go, okay, don't eat that.
So IntSec is the internal security, and
Oh, I love the insect security design here. I
why did
love
it
the
look like a
hat.
cowboy?
I love the hat. He does
And
need
so,
a spinal adjustment because that's some
yeah,
serious lordosis.
yeah.
No,
You then
actually,
have
I think he's just fat.
could be. You then have the analysis bureau, which looks over data.
Oh yeah.
So this is your NSA.
I like that they have a media branch that's legitimately designed to just instantly censor and edit material as it gets broadcasted.
Uh, then they have cryptanalysis.
There's Signal, which Signal has a saying: "Media examines every media message in the galaxy. We handle everything else so they can have the easy stuff."
You have tech. Find out how any hardware works and provide intelligence with hardware that's superior.
Because every now and again, because the Empire is expanding, in the unknown space, occasionally you will find alien species that they have to conquer/destroy, and they might have slightly more advanced technology than they do. Or they might stumble upon the ancient, like an ancient relic somewhere that was made by a long dead empire. Not necessarily infinite empire, but there's a lot of old states that existed.
Remember, 25,000 years the Old Republic existed.
So it is
A lot
entirely
of time.
possible that they find old stuff that's either been retrofitted out in the wilds or boonies, or alternatively, because again, technology doesn't entirely stagnate. That's another thing that the EU books are better about doing. Even the X-Wing is eventually replaced with the E-Wing. Because yes, it's an excellent machine, but it has limitations. It only has a certain ceiling of upgrades before you have to replace it. So what will happen is sometimes the rebels will crank out something new that's actually shockingly good, because quite a few engineers actually sided with them because they legitimately hated what the Empire was doing with their machinery.
So then you have interrogation.
That's
You
the
have your,
guys with the brain destroying droids.
is that what they did?
Yeah, remember the torture droid? That
Yeah,
was the
Doctor. Yeah,
yeah.
Doctor Ball.
Yeah, Dr. Ball. Basically, he was probably part of interrogation.
And then you have the Bureau of Operations.
Which is split into surveillance, infiltration. These are your spies.
Yeah.
I also like the technical memos they throw in throughout. That's a really nice touch. Cute idea trying to insert a 3PO into infiltration. It was a stupid idea having the 3PO transmit its findings directly to your office for two reasons. First, any unsecured transmissions in our office will be detected. Not might be, will be. Second, for direct transmission, you had to give the droid the exact coordinates to your office. If we hadn't known where your office was, we would now. So, Device, it was a stupid idea to send those 8 other 3POs out to find rival bases. The Bureau has managed to recover 7 of them, but one of them is still out there. If we don't find that last one before the rebels do, may give a close-up opportunity to see how rebel equipment works. That isn't a C3PO reference. That's legitimately just someone thought it was cute to make it, because eventually the EU plays with this. They have a protocol droid that plays double agent. Basically, from what I remember, they give it a secondary personality underneath the initial based on the AI coding that actually is the true core of the AI, with the outside veneer to make it less obvious. And yes, there is a protocol droid assassin, which is fucking magical.
So you have, what is it? You have infiltration. You have Renic. You have assassination, diploserve, destabilization, all various other branches.
There's actually a variant of agent. They make an agent whose term is called a Polywalks, which is a type of creature that lays dormant for decades before rampaging once the larvae turn into instars. I like that. That's a nice little
Hmm.
touch there. There's Renix. They're the branch in charge of counterintelligence. Diplosur. Diplomatic services, destabilization, which you mentioned, and assassination. While technically illegal, assassin droids are still used for certain choice assignments by intelligence.
That looks familiar. The droid body, it looks familiar. I just can't tell where it's from.
Huh.
And then you have intelligence, external communications, sedition.
Yes, there is an entire branch of the ISB whose job is to agitate rebellion.
Well, no, it specializes in knowledge
Knowledge of the
of
rebellion.
sedition. Yep. And crisis.
It actually makes sense that they have a branch specifically to deal with the crises and stuff.
It's more of an ad hoc, it appears.
Yep.
Then the various sector laws. Comlink, which is, I guess, the Imperial Intelligence HoloNet.
Ah, Princess Cyanide caught it out. It's a medical droid model that was retrofitted to be an assassin.
Oh,
Clever idea.
you're right. That's
disguising
the body.
an assassin. Yeah, disguising an assassin droid as a medical droid. That's a pretty good one. Also, might be low-key hinting at how Padme actually died.
Oh, that be. Oh wow, that be.
If the difficult birth doesn't kill her, the droid sure as fuck will.
Also, that gives the Polis Mossens a really bad name.
I like that idea. I think that's a sudden brain idea. That's really good. She died of heartbreak? Sure, she did. I mean, hilariously, you can die of heartbreak. This does happen.
I mean, think about it. Her husband's dead. I'm pretty sure everyone told her he's dead. Found out that not her husband killed children. Husband tried to kill her.
Yep.
And right after that gave birth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that heart's not surviving.
Especially if it was a difficult birth, she could have legitimately had a dangerous pressure drop and died. Because difficult births do happen even with medical salvation, because there's a condition where your blood pressure rises horrifically during pregnancy. That can legit just drop you. And there's nothing you can do about it if you don't get immediate medical emergency, attention. Which she didn't, because remember, she went into labor.
They prioritized the children.
Although you could argue that Palpy did intentionally kill her with the medical droid assassin. That's a good one. I think that's a pretty good one.
He would have had to know they would have gone to Polis Massa, which in that case, why didn't you just kill children and Obi-Wan?
Well, you could use the children.
Why not kill Obi-Wan?
Because it's funnier. No, think about it. If he kills Obi-Wan right then and there, he doesn't have the ability to further traumatize and horrify Vader later by revealing the detail. Oh yeah, he survived. In reality, it was almost certainly heartbreak that did it, aka, oh god, she had a difficult birth and her blood pressure died.
So, next they bring up, after all of the sector commands...
Oh look, the Imperial rank insignias, which was also in the Galaxy Guide.
We finally explain what the fuck all those symbols mean.
Yep, and this came from West End Games, man.
So little pens on the side signify rank. Then when it goes to priority sector command, it flips from the red-blue to blue-red.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then they explain the various types of stormtroopers.
Yes, because they have different models for different reasons. Oh,
Sand
this is
Trooper.
so cool.
Sea Trooper.
Yep, there are Sea Troopers. Makes sense.
Stormtrooper, Snow Trooper, and Scout Trooper.
I
really do like
the Snow Scout Trooper's head.
I don't know, the Snow Troopers... There's something about that.
I like this
blank mask.
I like the Scout Troopers design. Scout Trooper and Sea Troopers are great. Snow Trooper is also pretty fun.
Oh no. There's the 0G Trooper.
Oh yeah, let's show you that. The zero Z. Here he is.
Looks like something.
He actually is in oh, what are they called? An
It's a
elemental.
battle armor.
He's in an elemental. That's an
Oh God,
elemental.
did BattleTech rip this off too?
He might have. In reality, it's based on Starship Troopers.
Star Troopers. I think this wasn't a comic.
It was. It was in an early Marvel comic because I think they had the rights initially.
And now onto the military.
Do you like that they actually decided to include just a couple pages of this, like in the middle of it?
Actually, I believe there's also another, because apparently in One Shot Episode 4, there's a bunch of stormtroopers outside of the Death Star as the Millennium Falcon's coming in. So how do you explain why they're outside of the Death Star? They're in some sort of like not a zero G environment, but just some sort of like, I think it is a zero G kind of thing.
They have magnetic. I think they have magnetic boots.
Deep South Trooper.
So here we go. The military. This is very. This is one of the biggest things you will see of the Empire because again, the Empire's big thing is the military. The Navy is probably the largest wing of the Empire. Also,
And
fun fact. Since this is in the before times, before Georgie Porgy became a weird fucking pacifist, which is also why you had that weird plot line about Mandalorian pacifists in the Clone Wars. Yeah, no, the Republic actually had a navy.
they still did.
It just wasn't as big as what it would have been in this book.
Yeah, post Rusan Reformation. But they did have their own,
Post PT retcon, I like to call it.
and technically with the Clone Wars, they did have their military brought back up.
Yep, but the Republic had its own navy. Its main purpose was anti-insurgency.
Interesting they call it anti-insurgency, since well later it would have been anti-piracy.
That too. It also served as anti-piracy. So the changes in command structure. Governments had the right to call upon the Navy of the Old Republic in emergencies. They could petition the Senate if the forces were to be engaged for more than 7 standard days, but most actions could be concluded in a week. Which, funnily enough, means that you see this. This is pre PT. Padme could have asked for a naval wing to actually just show up to Naboo to blow those fuckers out of the water.
But would they have? But remember, Valorum sent a peacekeeping group first.
Yes,
Which
but
may
she
have
could have immediately called the Navy after the peace agreements failed.
Well, remember, the Trade Federation had representation on the Senate. They could say, "Why do we want the Republic to destroy our own ships?"
Planetary governments, though, have the right to call it. That doesn't include corporations.
Oh, well, she's also a child, so
She's also a very educated child with a advisor. Like, remember her several advisors like Bibble and what's the other guy? The guy who commanded the ship.
I forget his name.
I only remember Bibble because there's a fun webcomic called Darths and Droids, and the idea is it's basically they're playing a D&D equivalent in the Star Wars universe where all the characters are player characters. And the guy who was playing Qui-Gon kept accusing her older advisor of being the true Sith Lord. Because it's always the evil advisor that's responsible for all the bad things that happen.
Actually, I realized that's never been in Star Wars. It's never been the evil advisor.
Yeah.
But so you have
So,
your
like I said, you can tell this is written before Georgie did what he did, because by this logic, Naboo would have blown the Trade Federation out of the water by begging for help. Also, this means that General Grievous could have actually called for the Navy to at least check out when the mantises were eating his people.
They did not have Senate representation.
They didn't.
They were not.
You are correct. Yes.
They were not in the Senate. The Hunk were, I believe.
The Hook were, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they actually did use beg the Navy after he successfully was kicking them off world. No, that's actually what happened. That's partially why Grievous hated the Republic.
And the Jedi, because they refused to help him.
Since the disbanding of the Senate, the Navy is no longer required to respond to requests from planetary governments, including governors appointed by the Empire. Under new doctrine, individual planets are too insignificant to allow the direct control over an asset as important as the Navy, even for short periods of time. Instead, you have to now go to the sector groups, to the regional Moffs, Grand Moffs, or the Emperor. You have to essentially appeal to the Moffs, Grand Moffs, or Palpatine.
Well, this actually fits in the whole sort of uh, political manipulations thing. The only reason that the military can be called in is at the request of the Moffs. So the military can't go off on its own thing.
This is a definite change from the Republican Navy, where senators or other politically powerful beings could directly commandeer naval vessels, which is another thing that they kind of hint at. It would have been pretty easy for Palpatine to orchestrate some senators to, go rogue and start piracy. Don't you like how this book actually fits really well with the prequel trilogy, even with the changes George made to the background?
I know. It's really surprising.
It's well written. This is stuff that you would not see in modern writing, because this requires a passion and workmanship you won't see.
So some of the naval ranks then,
Mm-hmm.
you get your pilots,
Mm-hmm.
uh, your gunners. Oh, and I love the gunner helmets.
Oh yeah.
They're so goofy. I
Also,
have
they
no.
also they get hands-on training. And if you're wondering why the helmets look so goofy, those helmets actually are partial rangefinders and microcomputers that give them firing trajectories.
Oh, then actually, yeah, that makes sense. It's a giant computer.
Specialized computer helmets that not only offer protective wear, it's protection, but it's equipped with macro binocular viewplates and sensor plates and sensor arrays to assist with targeting fast-moving craft. Essentially, those helmets were made specifically to target things like X-wings and A-wings, actually, because A-wings are really fast.
And then you have your naval troopers.
Which you do see a little bit of, but not enough.
Actually, funny enough, it makes sense why they have that. And then in the Tanner 4, they also have that kind of conical helmet shape.
Yeah, it's essentially to aid with firing. It's essentially to aid with firing vectors, and also to
Uh,
help target. Basically, it's similar to the targeting computers on the X-wing, if not as
and then
elaborate.
and then you have the army.
Which is something you never see because they were cut.
They say the army was degenerated into a poorly trained police force with fancy uniforms,
Because I mean,
which
that's the point of the Navy. Yeah.
actually, this is, I think, retconned into the Justice Division, the guys that get blown up in episode 1 at the beginning,
Yes, it was.
because they're technically not the Grand Army of the Republic. That's the clones.
Yes. While this is somewhat retconned because George Lucas wanted them to not really have an army anymore, you could argue that this still works because the army, even in this book material, was very atrophied and probably just militia at this point, essentially planetary militia that were rallied up when needed. Because really, do you need a powerful army in a galaxy-spanning republic/empire, other than for land assaults? And if so, wouldn't it make sense to have Marines, which are traditionally attached to the Navy?
We've cut the army for budgetary reasons.
Doesn't it make sense that you wouldn't have a
Yeah.
very powerful army in that situation?
Yes. So, and I think now they're still even more of a defensive operation.
Yeah, I mean, Palpatine didn't really make a big army because that's the point of the stormtroopers. If you actually need to invade a planet, you use your best. That's the point. Anything else can be just either shot down or just bombarded by the Navy. So the new order of the army was completely overhauled. Training was brought back, as well as they became specialized as drop troopers.
Which actually kind of then, with Solo's appearance of the army, makes sense.
It's a shame that they made a piece. It's a shame that the directors never actually got to finish their movie because Kathleen Kennedy gave them $150 million, let it get finished to 92% completion, finally bothered to look at it, and then screamed at how she didn't like it. So she fired him and got another guy to essentially refilm the whole movie again for another $150 million. And then surprised Pikachu face when it didn't fucking make its money back.
Yeah, say whether black-clad Imperial soldiers or white armored stormtroopers, the Imperial army has grown to the mailed fist that pounds the thousand worlds of the Galactic Empire into submission.
Yep.
So the stormtroopers are part of the army.
They are counted as part of the army, which is an interesting touch. You'd think they'd be either attached to the Navy or their own section. My guess is it's because the army was so weak that they needed something to prop them up to fight against the Navy's influence and, ISB and Compnor.
That and the other thing we only see in the movies the stormtroopers. Honestly, to the average person, that is the army.
Yeah. The personnel that make up the army include many specialized soldiers. However, most of these men are qualified in the following types. Army troopers make up the majority of their planet-bound fighting forces. They wear similar uniforms to the naval trooper, complete with a helmet, but the army wears gray, which is fitting because it's based on the field gray uniform of the German army.
Then you have the army assault crews.
Those are the AT-ATs and AT-STs.
Oh yeah. They have the same uniform.
Yep. That's actually where they got the trooper uniforms from.
Yeah. Then the stormtrooper,
which are the elites. They're shock troopers.
Soldiers support the two arms of the military, assisting ground forces and the fleets, but remain apart and separate.
So this is actually its own branch. It's just tied to both the Army and Navy.
To bring up another franchise, it's kind of like Halo. They now have a Spartan branch.
Which makes sense.
They're technically attached to ONI, but obviously they work with the UNSC.
Which again makes sense because they're a small. They're supposed to be the knife to the mailed fist of the army. Solo had a tie-in deal with Denny's. It was doomed from the start. What are you talking about? The Hobbit had the Hobbit hole breakfast meal, and it only turned into liquid shit in the stretching of the 5 pages. Now, admittedly, there were some really stupid, horrible, garbage, pathetic video game segments that were in the first 2 movies. And you could easily cut, I think, half to 2/3 of some of the movie parts. But I would say it only became nuclear garbage that made me want to watch The Last Jedi when I saw the elves shoot their arrow and then a horrible CGI dwarf, after the CGI elves fired their arrows in uniform, screamed, "Bagurgaga!" And then a bunch of trebuchet and then a bunch of ballista bolts with spinny bits on them showed up to shoot the elves, and they called them the Twiddly Whittlies. Look, I only wanted to watch Solo and cut my eyes out with a spork when I saw Legolas get picked up by a horrible CGI bat and cut the heads off of 100 orcs upside down. These are both scenes from the extended cut. Look, I only wanted to give myself a Colombian necktie when I saw Gaston shoot like no one else by using his son as a ballista carriage to fire a bolt from a broken bow in a fucking tower. As Benedict Cumberbatch, the furry dragon fuck that he is, talks about, "What are you going to do now?" as he sees him fire the thing that he knows can kill him into him using his son as a siege equipment. No, I think the Twiddly Whittlies are a funny idea. If you want my favorite awful dumb idea if you want my favorite idea that they added in the extended cut, it's the scythe chariots powered by goats with the repeating crossbow on top that's like a Gatling gun. That feels like a really fun, stupid dwarf weapon. Doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings, but it does feel like something I'd see in Warhammer Fantasy, and it slaps. My least favorite is a tie between the intentionally mutilated troll with the smashy swingy arms that is guided by a dude on top, or the time where they summoned giant earthworms that can burn through rock. so they can have a climactic appearance. Why didn't you use the great Earth Eaters to eat everyone in The Hobbit?
I guess it's the opposite of the Eagles.
Oh, by the way, the best extended cut scene from Bloating of the 5 Pages is the time where you know the really ugly guy with the monobrow that's whole purpose is to be a Weasley incompetent evil person, and he has no redeeming qualities. He dresses in drag, intentionally gives himself very thick and heavy boobs made out of money, runs away to hide in a trebuchet as Gandalf ineffectually looks like an idiot as he almost gets killed by a troll that looks like a Hills Have Eyes motherfucker. And then a coin from the guy's money boob falls on the trebuchet thingy, which flings him into the troll's mouth and chokes him to death. And then almost like when you crap your pants when you die, the gold shits out of the troll's mouth to represent that Alfred is dead. That is the best worst scene in the movie, and it made me fucking laugh.
What are you gonna do?
I
Shoot me? Dragon moments before getting shot.
That's what
And
Smaug fucking did.
that's a DEI disabled troll. Order is an equal employment business.
But it wasn't Mordor who hired him. It was Azog. Oh no,
No,
wait. Azog was employed by Mordor, so you're not wrong. Sorry. Why
the
didn't
sub
Sauron have more of them, or the troll that headbutted itself to death against walls, or the trolls with the catapults on them?
well, you see, Sauron might be equal employment, but these guys are actually really racist, and they refuse to work with men.
It's because Azog's white, isn't it? He is the pale orc.
Speaking of white guys, so they say that the stormtroopers, um, they actually don't know where the stormtroopers came from. They
Which
say
is a
they were
nice
an
touch.
obedient force that was loyal to no one save him. They were specialized warriors designed to provide adequate protection to the varied worlds of the Galactic Empire with little preparation time. Which, holy shit, that's the clone troopers.
They actually say right here. Some say the stormtroopers were created to provide the Emperor with an obedient force. That yeah, he created them.
And bear in mind, this is
Way before any
thir-
ideas of the prequel trilogies were actually clarified.
13 years before, and it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Cold Assault Troopers, which actually have their own stat line, they're basically giving stat lines to them because they are slightly different. Cold Assault Troopers are specialists in taking on ice worlds. Basically, all of the stormtroopers on Hoth were trained on cold worlds or polar regions.
actually, one thing. They say with the standard stormtrooper has a dexterity of 2D, you reduce it by 1 because of the armor, and you reduce the blaster by 1 as well. So is that explaining the aiming issue?
I think so. The concept is that the helmet visibility is not exactly ideal. Also, for protective reasonings, because it is somewhat resistant to blasters, it probably is somewhat heavy.
Yeah. So you have then you have the cold assault.
Funnily enough, aquatic stormtroopers actually do not lose the benefits because their armor is lighter.
0G troopers.
I would probably have made them the most dangerous of all because they basically are in powered armor.
Oh, they have mini proton torpedoes.
Oh yeah. By the way, if you're wondering, West End Games, I believe, has order of magnitude mega damage once you get up to larger equipment. Yeah, those are not fun. And last but not least, Scout Troopers. The effects of Stormtroopers. When Stormtroopers were first assigned to the Army and Navy units, everyone questioned who they were and where they'd come from.
They refer themselves by number or rank rather by name.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
And this is before all of the clone stuff became a thing. I think it's because they actually did play around with cloning as a concept in early Star Wars ideas.
Yeah, like Luke. And Luke.
And don't forget the Luke with 3 U's, and then the one with 4 U's that we saw in The Last Jedi.
And I thought that's Jake.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. He's such a horrible clone of Luke Skywalker, he doesn't even get the name.
Now they bring up the capital ship.
Let's if you're wondering why the Luke with 2 U's is a thing, the concept was it's so that you knew that who they were talking about, because you can't just say the clone all the time.
Or Luke and Luke.
Like, it's dumb, but there was a reason for it.
Better than saying Luke 1 and Luke 2.
Like, it was just an attempt to. What might have probably have helped is if you bolded one or changed like the font typing for the other.
Yeah. So now they bring up the ships of the Empire.
Which, if you're a gearhead, this is going to be pretty great. Like I said, I love these books.
And if you have played any of the Empire at War games or the mods, you'll recognize these ships.
There's the
Because I'm
assault shuttle.
pretty sure they're all in it.
Yep, there's the assault shuttle. It's essentially the thing that goes up and down planets. These are where stormtroopers ride on. Most comparable to Alien's Cheyenne class drop ship.
Then you
Although
have these.
I will say the assault shuttle though is a far smoother ride, and you can carry more people in it.
Does look like a giant bus, though.
It is a giant bus, but
Oh wait, it's the ship from Spaceballs.
yes.
Then you have the Skip Ray blast boat.
Yep, this is something you don't really see too often.
Systems patrol craft.
Yeah, these are basically attached to planets. They are not expected to be impressive, but they are there to essentially guard the skies.
Luke Prime, Luke Alpha, and Luke the Horatio.
You might see the Tartan cruiser. It might be in here.
Yeah.
System patrol craft.
Yeah, these I've definitely seen in Expanded and Thrawn's Revenge.
Yep. These are capital ship designs that are smaller. The main purpose of them is to apprehend smuggling vessels. Essentially, these are the types of ships that usually are sent out to get people like Han Solo. They're not exactly the best at their job, but they're not too shabby for what their job is.
You have the Lorinar. You have the escort carrier.
Oh no, don't forget, they also show gigantic models of some of these. Like, they show the Gamma class assault shuttle in full detail. Which, this is another reason I really like this fucking book.
Then they have the Lancer frigate.
There's the escort carrier, which is actually, if you don't have a larger ship, this is Coat Drive's escort carrier. These are what you usually put in TIE fighters and bombers in.
Oh yeah, this is that ship.
They're smaller because Star Destroyers can actually carry them, but a Star Destroyer is very fucking expensive. The whole purpose of this thing is it's a cheap way to carry them, and basically they use them as what's called CAP, close air protection. They only carry about 6, but that's usually more than enough. Also, escort carriers can be used to carry at least a few regiments of a few companies of troops. There's the Lancer-class frigate.
Then the Interdictor.
The Interdictors are pretty well known.
Yes, the things that can stop hyperspace. Because it just creates a giant gravity well that, well, you're not going to pilot it because you're just going to fly directly next to it.
Yep, and Spaghettify.
And it drops ships out already in hyperspace into real space.
Which I think is a very clever way to essentially punish people who are trying to escape via hyperspace. Far smarter than what Disney did, that's for sure.
The Imperial Star Gallon.
Yep.
And the Dreadnought Heavy Cruiser.
Yes, the Disney Star Wars Dreadnought is not the first of its name. This is the true Dreadnought.
I always found it weird how they have these little, like, bulbous sacks on the sides of the ship.
Well, that's because this is an Old Republic ship.
Wait, no, it's also Rendili. I forget if Rendili is Mon Calamari.
It might be.
No, it's a core world.
It is a core world, but this is an old ship. This is pre-Republic, and they're seen as kind of a waste because it's slow, it has weak shield. It's not very good.
The Carrack light cruiser.
Which is right here. It's an old vessel. This is actually a ship that you would see in the Old Republic before George Lucas changed how the things looked.
They still.
They
No, they
exist,
never
but I think
showed
that
it.
no, they exist, but I think there's different art for them now. Those are sacks. Those sacks are its eggs. It's like the Yuzhan Vong ships. It grows them in asteroids. That's funny.
Oh, so
Hey,
that's what was chasing Han out.
torpedo spheres. This is what they used to use back when they were basically the original protocol. Back when they were essentially ordered to destroy a world, was you would essentially destroy the shielding, and one of the more blunt ways to do it, if you didn't care about assets, is you'd use these things to essentially bomb the shit out of the shielding until it broke. It's a miniature Death Star, essentially. I mean, the ballistics it uses are different, but the principle's similar. Then there's the Victory-class destroyers, which are also Rendili. And then you might know the Victory 2 Star Destroyer. And then last but not least, the Imperial Star Destroyer.
You know what's fun is that the Victory, I believe, is based off of one of Macquarie's original designs.
They actually make it a point because what happened was Rendili lost the contract to Kuat.
And I do have to give it at least to Disney. They at least showed the Victory. I don't think it was shown during Lucas's era.
It was not, but remember, Disney had a habit of digging through Ralph McQuarrie's trash.
I
And
mean, it
then,
already existed,
well,
so
no,
it's
but like it was like crackhead desperation. Like, no, we need to pretend our fan fiction. Look, we stole this from the garbage. Look,
well,
it's
no.
canon. You care about canon, don't you?
No, the Victory had already been in existence. What was digging through the trash was them deciding, fuck it, we're putting a Death Star laser on a Victory class.
Let's not
If
get me
you look,
wrong. That's something you probably could do, but you'd have to essentially replace most of the ship.
the Zeiston class Star Destroyer is just a copy of the Victory class Star Destroyer.
It is. Because again, they dug through the trash! Look, I don't mind digging through Ralph McQuarrie's garbage, but don't piss on me and tell me that you care about the franchise by doing that. Last but not least, the Imperial class Star Destroyers that we all know and love, because they are the big Dorito chips that destroy everything that's around them until they get blown up by a dude in a tiny ship.
And speaking of that, the Super Star Destroyer.
This is the even bigger Star Destroyer.
Oh, 1,000 turbo laser batteries, 12 TIE fighter squadrons,
Yes.
including 2 made up of interceptor models,
Yes.
a full core of stormtroopers, 25 AT-ATs, 50 ASTs, or ATSTs.
And don't forget that this thing also carries enough equipment and material to instantly establish an Imperial base. It actually can establish 3 barracks before it runs dry.
Interested they say 4 in service.
Funnily enough, this is actually the main. This is something that Palpatine was personally invested in. He liked the Star Destroyer. He wanted an even bigger one, and he got what he wanted.
But how many were actually made?
There is the Executor, and I believe they might have made 1 or 2 more.
They made classes of them.
Yes, they
Well,
did.
actually, I think it's because they can, at least on Wikipedia, they consider the Super Star Destroyer to be any big, massive ship.
Incorrect. It's an actual specific model because Palpatine, again, liked the Star Destroyer. It was imposing. It had a lot of the benefits and bonuses that he wanted. But you know what Palpatine wanted it? He wanted it bigger because of the fear factor. But also, again, he actually gave a reason for this. It carries 38,000 troops, and you have more than enough equipment to basically build 3 prefabricated garrison bases.
Well, no,
So this thing was essentially a mobile headquarters.
because Executor is a class of Super Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
There are others.
From what I understand, the Executor is the first of its type. Also, yes, the Super Star Destroyer, if it felt like it, could land on planets, kill itself, but it would also destroy like a lot of the planet.
Oh wow, there's a size map they have for it.
Yeah, Super Star Destroyers ain't nothing to fuck with. You like how you can't even fit the fucking thing on there along with the torpedo sphere?
All vessels are shown to scale.
Yes. So you see that assault shuttle where you can get on, or the blast boat? Compare that to the torpedo sphere, or the Super Star Destroyer, the Executor. Compare it to the regular Star Destroyer, or even the Victory, which is smaller than the Star Destroyer.
Oh, actually, I like on Chapter 6, silhouette of the Super Star Destroyer continued from previous page.
Yeah.
It
No,
goes
it
on.
keeps going.
It goes on for more pages. It stops at page 71.
Do you really love how they show how fucking big this thing is?
I remember one A-Wing killed it.
Yup. God, I love it. So here's some custom ordnance. Cloaking fields are a thing. It is the ultimate ideal. It's very controversial, but they are rumors that there are cloaking fields.
Isn't that the TIE Defender?
Yes. There's also the hyperspace pulse mass generator. It is essentially a pebble spreader. The point is you put hyper energy that are shot out into an area of space. If you're traveling through hyperspace and you cross the equivalent area in real space, they come in contact. These spheres overwhelm the blocking capacity of the ship's shields, and essentially it gets spaghettified in hyperspace and burped out in real space.
They mined hyperspace fields.
Yes.
And you knew they only gave those coordinates of avoidance to the military.
Oh god, yeah. I just love the idea of Palpatine going, "Now where are those exotic eggs I was asking for my breakfast?" Sir, they were blown up. They seem to have been shredded apart by the hyperspace pulse mass generators in this sector. Oh, ha! Serves them
Well,
right.
well,
They were late on my last delivery.
did it kill anyone unimportant? Yes, several thousands.
Good.
Excellent.
Good.
Next, magnetic bombards.
So yeah, they also invented bombs specifically to target high-tech worlds. These things fry electronic systems.
So it's an EMP?
It is a weaponized heavy EMP bomb.
You mean the EMP?
Yeah.
Please tell me somebody gets that red versus blue reference.
Cricket noises. Insert coffin dance involving Rooster Teeth being a skeleton in a grave.
Rest in peace.
Two-wave grav shock devices. So, in a torpedo sphere, a two-way grav shock, also known as a planet buster, is designed to do damage on a planetary scale. By localizing a planet's gravity, the grav shock waves can simulate earthquakes, floods, and other disasters. Yeah, Palpy was like, I want a Death Star, but cheaper. Well, why don't we make natural disasters by altering the planet's gravitational center? I love it. We'll build 20 of them.
However, successful tests make this ordnance worth exploring. They've used it before in testing.
Oh yeah, they have blown up planets just because they can.
But this is an inhabited planet, Emperor.
They knew what they were getting into.
Listen, they landed on the planet. They built their settlements. They knew it was ripe for earthquakes. I say, let them die.
Make sure that I get 10% of the best stuff from their corpses. You can take the rest, Grand Moff. Orbital night cloaks and visual electromagnetic intensifiers. Yeah, these are stealth cloaks for people. Oh wait, no, it's something. No, it's huge nets of link satellites which intercept energy. So no, these things are for blockades. Electronic blockades. That's pretty good.
And remember, this is taken from a point of view of right after the Battle of Yavin.
Yep.
The Empire got busy with its technology.
I mean, some of these stuff were already in their skunk works beforehand. It's just they were given even more funding after Yavin. Land vehicles, because yes, the Empire has a bunch of those.
Oh, and look at that juggernaut. Isn't that familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a vehicle illustration by Carl Martin? So yeah, the episode they took the the Juggernaut for episode 3 comes from this.
Yes. Well, there are newer models. The Juggernaut is a venerable one. It has some design feature problems. It has dual steering, which means it can be a bit fiddly. Lookout posts. You see that big tower up top? Yeah, that's a sniper's paradise right there against you. It is basically the punishment detail if you're on one of these things.
Well, then again, you're moving very fast. So how would you be able to get hit?
It's extremely important, but it's extremely vulnerable. The Juggernaut's pretty well armored though, so it's not a too shabby vehicle. There's flaws in its design, but that's fine. There's actually the compact assault vehicle, which is a single trooper. It has a battery on top. The mobile command base. I actually really like the design of the mobile command base because it kind of reminds me of something I'd see in Gundam. It has a little bit of Big Tray or Dabood energy, or Double Day as it's called.
You have then the repulsor lift sled.
I forgot about the gag with the Star Destroyer. I forgot about it. That's a beautiful visual gag.
It finally ends there. That and the floating fortress.
Oh, I love the repulsor lift sled. That's a cool design. I'd want one of those in
Is
Star
that
Wars.
is that a two? Oh no, it's a one person.
It's a one-person speeder. Yeah.
It looks like those speeders.
It's not a full speeder bike. It's slower than that. It's not designed for speed, but yeah.
Well, no. Do you remember the speeders from episode 3
Oh yeah, you're right.
when they
This
were
is where they
killing
came from.
Galia?
Yeah, this is where they came from.
Or the two-person one. It just looks familiar.
By the
And he's got
way,
the
do
same
you want to
shape.
know why speeder bikes were a thing in the Empire? They actually explain it. Swoop gangs in the Outer Rim territories have long been difficult for the Empire to apprehend. Planetary governments constantly begged for protection from these roving pirates. Initially, Imperial scout troopers were deployed, but the more powerful swoops were outmatching their bikes. They made these to essentially be able to outmuscle them while keeping the same speed.
Oh, that'd be a wonderful campaign. You're the IHOP, the Imperial Highway Patrol.
It actually reminds me of a fun idea, of a shitpost idea I always have, where you are the equivalent of the IRS. So in this case, you're the Imperial Tax Bureau of Commerce.
Yes, sir. You're in Comp Force.
You like kick down Tatooine's. You like go to Tatooine because technically it's part of the outer, even though it's Outer Rim and kind of in Hut space, it's still technically an Imperial base. To force Jabba to pay the taxes he owed on the order on that temple he took over.
IRS agents versus the Rancor.
IRS agents versus Jabba's lawyer, who is also a Twi'lek, who is explaining kindly that technically, since this building is still a religious establishment, that he doesn't have to.
It is. The Bamor monks live there. They turned Big Fortuna into one of them after he survived,
Yeah.
along with Droopy McCool.
So imagine that, where you have to get into a legal Phoenix
Oh, no.
Wright style debate to force Jabba. And then when you win, Jabba then sends his Gamorrean guards to apprehend and kill you by a Rancor.
Wait, no, Droopy McCool. I think Droopy McCool died. Yeah, the band Droopy McCool died. I remember looking up. Snice Noodles became a spice addict,
Yep.
and Max Rebo went on to continue playing.
Yep, the band played on. There's an entire short story about how Max Rebo and some of his boys managed to escape.
But I think they did get into a fight with the modal noodles or the modal nodes.
Yes, they did.
The guys with
The modal nodes were quite upset about some previous bullshit. I don't care what coup comp nor sense. I ain't paying taxes. And then you see like the Death Star orbiting the planet. And then you hear like Grand Moff Tarkin going, "I'll have you know that we've invented a narrow beam focus. We don't need to merely destroy a planet. We can destroy a city off of the face of the earth with this. Pay the $100 you owe in back taxes, or I will detonate every atom in your body." Very well, you have chosen death. Blows you up. I'm just now envisioning that happening, where they just send the Death Star out to just destroy a tax haven.
Oh, they would have done that.
The Death Star has an eye surgery setting.
Oh my god. The next thing that comes up is a literal ad.
Floating fortress. Yeah, we're ready for the toughest competition. Engineered to support system patrol and point defense requirements at the highest level, this upgraded combat veteran sets new standards in meeting multi-role mission integration and intersystem jump needs. From the expertise developed in the successful and popular series of TIE starfighters comes the newest generation in blast boat technology. GAT 12H Skip Ray delivers the performance edge needed for greater tactical response.
This is a military ad. This is what they give to people in the Star Wars version of an arms conference.
I actually think I remember Luke wanting to pilot one of these originally.
I like even the logo. Cinar Fleet Systems, a record of excellence.
I actually think I vaguely remember Luke wanting to pilot this thing.
Was it a...
It was...
No, it's a Skyhopper. I think you're
Yeah.
thinking of the Skyhopper's the one he had.
No, that's
blasted
the one
with.
that's the one he played around with. But like when he joined, he actually had interest in joining the Imperial Navy before the incident with his aunt and uncle. Remember?
Yeah, but he would have been a TIE fighter pilot than a skip ray guy.
Oh no, I mean this is also used for some of the same missions.
Yeah. Now they actually give the lengths of the TIE fighter.
Oh, look at that! Look at these technical details.
And a new variant, the ground support one.
Yep, ground support variant.
And the bomber?
Which notice it... No. Also note that it has its payloads on the bottom. You can actually see the differences. Interceptor model. Bomber model.
Then a bunch of images. Ralph McQuarrie stuff. I think one of them might be an image from one of the movies.
It is. It's mostly Ralph McQuarrie, but still. By the way, check out this floating fortress. The incident, Uncle Owen and Emperor were known tax avoiders. No. What happened was they faked their deaths.
They just had two skeletons lying in the closet.
Yes, they had Anakin's mom. They had Shmi's corpse. They had Shmi's corpse.
And it was and her husband's.
And her husband's corpse.
What was his name? Was it Clark?
Clark. They just used Batman and Clark's corpses to fake their deaths.
My emergency bug out skeleton.
Emergency bug out. Well, no. The best part is they actually had blasters, and they faked actually being. What should have happened is Obi-Wan's like, this is too accurate for Stormtrooper aim.
Now I want an ending where they come back. They're in their what? They're like 110s. Or they're hundreds, and they shoot Rey.
Get off our lawn! Get off our lawn! And then you see Rey turn. No, and then you cut to Rey looking like Bruce Skeleton.
So you have the command speeder.
Gaddum hussy going off to kill our nephew. That's what you get, bitch. Although they cut before they finish the word bitch. That's what you get, bitch. Command speeders, which are larger than what you usually think of for speeders.
Well, it's a command one. It's got 3 people in it.
There's the Mechun Hover Scout, which is a hovercraft, which is fun.
That looks like something from BattleTech.
Or the other way around.
I think the Savannah came out before, but who knows? Oh, and they give a vehicle comparison guide, including the AT-AT and the AT-ST.
They also have a repulsor lift sled right there.
And then sector group organization.
So the roles of the Army and Navy within a sector group. One of the Emperor's first actions was to refurbish the structure and personnel of the Army, establishing it as a branch equal to the Navy. This wasn't originally a thing. The Navy usually had dominance. This equality is still in part theory, as the Navy is reluctant to give up its position of preeminence. Also, again, makes sense. Personal dictatorship. This allows the Army and Navy to squabble, meaning that they're less focused on trying to overthrow Palpy. So, yeah, that's kind of a big thing about that. There's also sector groups. The roles of the Army and Navy were meshed more closely. And the role of the Army is to eliminate military threats and to the established Imperial political order on the surface. If the planet is not under Imperial control, it is to engage and defeat any local military force capable of resistance. And when engaged in operations, they can expect support from the Navy during the initial drop phase. When on garrison duty, the Army's mission is essentially unchanged, except they are expected to provide firepower and backup to Comp Nor and intelligence operatives. When aboard a naval vessel, their primary duty is to stay clear of the naval personnel who are doing their duty and see that their equipment is maintained. They are also responsible for the defense of the vessel if there is boarding action or during a battle.
I like with the Navy. So their mandate is to secure the orbital space around planets and investigate vessels, which, in the opinion of the commanding officer, appear capable of disrupting the security of orbital space. They also have a mission to seek out new worlds and
Conquer them.
Well, no. As a part of, they have to protect scientific missions as well.
You like how there's a little bit of Star Trek in here?
Yeah, that has to be a bit of a nod, but it's completely atrophied to the point where newer commanders are not even aware that it's actually part of their doctrine.
Also, if Army commanders deem the surface situation beyond hope of victory, or if the proper political authorities directly command it, the Navy is to execute a series of punitive attacks upon the target. The attacks are given code names which vary according to the mission and change frequently. The only code name which is not changed is Base Delta Zero, the code for complete destructions of all assets of productions.
That is a Soviet reference.
Yes, it is.
What was the order number?
Don't know. 221 maybe? So the organization of the Army, there was a clear-cut distinction in the Army of the Old Republic between troops, those who could be expected to see combat, and support personnel, who usually stayed away from this. In the Old Republic, the probability of anyone over the rank of lieutenant landing in a blaster blaze was pretty much zero. This is still a thing in the New Order, though support personnel are more closely integrated in units now, and they actually still actually have a bit of training, at least in terms of combat.
So the squads are an 8-man unit in the Imperial Army.
Oh god, you know, this is actually inspiring me because we're talking about like organization structures. At one point, ImpCit, we have to do the Aliens Colonial Marines technical manual.
Oh,
I have that.
Even though
It's
that's
really
not
good
RPG,
read.
it's
it's a really good read. And actually, you can use it as a companion piece to Free World's Alien RPG or the original one, the one that was made by the people who made the flowchart table nightmare. Oh god.
So a squad is commanded by a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
So make recommendations.
Also, note, an Imperial squad is smaller than the 10 and 12-man squads that were common in the Old Republic. But the difference is their training was better.
You know what's funny is that in Empire at War, the squad sizes you get four units of four. So technically, you get two squads.
Yeah, you like how they accidentally were accurate to this book?
Yeah.
If you're wondering, this is actually somewhat similar to squads in actual militaries, vary in size from 9, which is two fire teams, to 13, Baker's dozen, which represents a third fire team, which usually has more specialists in the third squad and the third fire team,
So the squad gets a sergeant and
which is accurate to real life military. Sergeant commands a squad in real life.
first man on the list is automatically given the rank of corporal. Each man knows his line of succession.
This is a bit different than actual military protocol, but it's fair.
This has led to certain expressions lower than the 8-man and certain as the 1-man's mind.
I like that they put a little bit of
Yeah.
culture in there. Like a little bit of military culture there.
Leading effort is to give each squad a light repeating blaster.
Yep, light repeating blaster. Repeating blasters carried and operated by one man. Light repeating
Yep.
blasters have been added to squads in almost every sector, but the rearming effort has been sporadic.
They actually named some sectors where it's been a bit
Heavier. Shui,
yeah.
Haron, and Nimbus, which is, yeah.
Sharpshooter squads are indeed filled with ranks with troopers whose accuracy with blasters is greater than the standard trooper.
Which actually, funnily enough, if you actually show how often the stormtroopers land their marks in the original movie, in A New Hope, they're still actually performing something like 4 times better than real military soldiers. Mainly because of the opening scene where they wipe the floor with the rebels on that cruiser.
That, and to be honest, I'd say with the blasters, they're a little bit more okay with being out in the open.
Yep.
Like,
Not
yeah, like if you had complete armor covering you,
especially
yeah,
since it's supposed to be rated to at least partially negate a blaster. It's not going to guarantee, but it's like a helmet where what would have killed you turns into an injury instead.
they're really emphasizing these light repeating blasters.
Which I think is a
The
little weird.
wouldn't sharpshooters have maybe more of a long rifle or something like that?
They should. This is a bit wrong, I think, but that's okay. And
Then you have
there's also engineering squads. They contain specialists and non-combat skills. Engineering squads are designed to get into, go through and around, or go over anything.
demolitions, med packs, sensor arrays, portable units,
Mm-hmm. There's also
repulsor lift squads,
repulsor lift squads. Those are the guys that deal with essentially defending those.
heavy weapon repulsor lift, including a grenade launcher or even a light laser cannon.
Yeah, these are things that are designed to stop boarding actions.
The scout troopers are organized differently. They have a high rate of loss and heritage. Most come from systems with a strong tradition of mounted warriors, cavalry, or knights of some kind. The Emperor Cole is useful from these various doctrines and left as much of these traditions intact as possible. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This, I'm not imagining then an Empire unit that is like a crusading warband.
If you really want, you could actually use because while it's not necessarily reliable, you could always use either the mirror of the original 1D4 Chan's generator tables from 40K, because they have Imperial Guard regiments. You could play around with that for the Imperial Army in Star Wars.
Oh, and they're called a lance.
Yes.
Each lance contains 5 scouts.
Yes,
One
they do.
scout per bike.
I think they actually came up with the numbers because of the speeder bike chase in episode 6. Because I think there were 5 of them.
Ah, yeah.
I would have to
Yeah,
rewatch
no,
it,
they would
but
have.
yeah.
Well, hold on. They would have had to have 2. I think, yeah, they had 3. There were 3 others.
Yeah.
If not, I mean, it's a.
Either way, it's
Eh.
still reasonable.
So then you have augmenting squads. You have platoons, which are 4 squads. Which, yeah, so it's a platoon.
Yep, with a
Or to-
lieutenant, a commander, and a sergeant major as the adjutant.
total of 38 units in a basic platoon.
If an Imperial commander has time to develop a plan of attack, they often assign an artillery section. They refer to this practice as grafting. For entering a
Uh,
combat situation, a lieutenant usually sends a sergeant major to the squad, which he believes will come under the most pressure. It is if possible, the lieutenant does not stay with anyone's squad, but tries to go where he is most needed on the field. This tends to give lieutenants a short lifespan. There are two
yeah.
types of lieutenants that usually last the longest. There's the pragmatic ones that realize the limitation and sticks with one squad. And then there is the
Waving of hands and occasionally screaming at the top of their lungs.
yeah.
Assault platoons contain 2 line squads, 2 heavy squads. Artillery have 4 heavy or medium artillery tubes. Repulsor lift platoons, armor platoons. Yeah, they're really detailing out.
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna probably start to skim. We're pretty far into the book, but that's fine. It's just because these are pretty, you know,
Yeah.
fascinating to read, but definitely.
Well, then, yeah, you have your companies.
Yeah, let's move on to
Um,
companies. There's also augmenting platoons, since they're the most
yeah.
flexible unit in the army.
Well, no, they actually have a breakdown a little bit further on armies on a company level.
Yep. So a line company is the smallest unit which is capable of extended operations on its own, which hilariously is the actual definition of a company in modern military parlance. Funnily
Yeah.
enough, it's details like this which is why the expanded universe was so liked. And if you're ever curious on why Karen Travis, who was somewhat notorious back in the day for her views on the Mandalorians, still was well liked before she got pretty bad with them, it's specifically because she did the same stuff with her Republican commandos.
And was she former military?
I think she either married or was briefly in the military. Yes, she either married a military man or was at least very well familiarized with them. She's also one of the few writers that actually tries to give the correct scales to a galaxy-wide war.
Oh, she was. Apparently served in the Territorial
Yes.
Army and the Royal Navy Auxiliary Services.
Yes, that's why she actually is pretty good about sussing out and giving fairly accurate views in terms of scale. There's a reason why people liked her, and there's a reason why there's still people who did, even though they didn't necessarily like how she handled her favorite pet faction. It was to her detriment, though, when she wrote for Halo. Her Halo books are notoriously bad.
Though I do realize this with the breakdown of these companies, I'm pretty sure there's at least one Hoi 4 mod that uses this as their basis for template design.
Yes and no. It's kind of abstracted.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's 152 troops with command elements and support personnel, raising it to 180. A company is commanded by a captain who is served by 4 staff officers, all of whom are the equivalent of lieutenant in rank. SC1 is the company lieutenant, the captain second in command. 2 is the logistics officer, 3 is medical, and 4th is the technical. In addition, there are 23 support personnel, 8 in logistics, 11 in technical, and 4 in medical. Each support person is aided by 2 in medical to 11 in logistics. Droids. That's their droid component because they also have a droid section. For an average of 118 droids per company. If the mission is to be of longer than usual, or if the company is to be completely isolated, support personnel will be augmented with additional droids. Droids are never accounted for in Imperial scan docs on organization or equipment. They are an invisible support network within the military. Which is an interesting touch. It really shows how little droids are considered. Like, they're not even charted as numbers.
And this is even before the Clone Wars.
Yep.
Though I think they're basing it on that line of C-3PO's. You said like we're made to suffer, and also well the no droids line in the cantina.
As for staying in touch, the need for a reliable lightweight communication gear to keep platoon commanders are responsible. They have a bunch of stuff for that. A drop company can be orbit loaded for missions of up to 6 weeks, although 2 weeks is the Imperial standard. There's artillery companies known as batteries. They have either 16 heavy or medium artillery tubes or 32 lights. Then there's heavy weapons companies that have more assault platoons and 2 standard line platoons. Again, you can see why I would recommend you could legitimately use the Warhammer 40k creation tables if you wanted to do an Imperial Army regiment from a planet. Like, if you wanted to do a Star Wars unit, you could probably use this. There's also an attack armor company, which is either 200 men for heavy tanks or 232 for light tanks. There's also a breakthrough company, which these are usually attached to battalion headquarters and so on. Then there's repulsor lift companies, and they also mention a general purpose droid. It's a low-cost commercial model, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, look, scanning through the rest, it basically continues the breakdown from battalion, army, sector, and then
Oh my god, they
onto
actually...
navy.
No, here's something really cool. They actually came up with their own equivalent to NATO logo symbolizations for the type of unit. They have unique ones for infantry, armor, sharpshooters, heavy weapons, artillery, repulsor lift, scouts, engineers, and special unit, as well as size symbols. You don't usually see this sort of shit. At least not in most, at least in most most newer RPGs, you'd never see something like this. Hell, you don't see some of this in minis gaming.
I mean, you don't really need it.
You don't, but it's so lovely when they do it.
It is. It flushes things out.
That's why I'm willing. That's why I'm willing to stick it through it. So from then on, there's the battalions. So these are expected to be relatively secure. These are led by majors. There's a big. Let's just kind of.
Yeah, it just keeps going on. Same thing.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like,
Yeah,
genuinely, the fact that they talk about battalions and then regiments and then battle groups, that's really cool.
like so. Overall, it says for a sector army, the average would be about 774,576 troops with
Over a million
um,
over a million
personnel and
personnel, which is your tail. Basically, the average
I
tooth to tail for a sector army is about
2 million.
no. It's about 1 point, I'd say 1.4 or 1.3 to 1 in favor of the tail. Which ain't too shabby. I believe that's actually similar to our US military, or at least it was in the 80s.
As an active duty,
No, tail refers to your personnel that's traditionally used as support. That's what I was interpreting for that.
but for our entire army or the entire military.
Well, no, troops stands for active combat personnel. This would be like your actual people in the field. Personnel refers to the support companies and equipment that are not directly on the field, that usually do important things like signals, communication, logistics, uh, religious services. Chaplains count as personnel, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we were saying one sector is
No, for a
the.
sector army, this is like vaguely. For the whole galaxy, who knows? It could be different.
Yeah, they never explain how many sectors there are.
And that's the point, because if they clarify, then they could be wrong.
Yeah.
So as for the Navy, oh boy, yeah, that was just the Army. They have an entire
So
section on the Navy.
Navy's ships, it goes line, which can go from 1 to 20.
Oh, by the way, if you're wondering, achieving the rank of a ship captain is considered the culmination of a naval career. Like, no matter the size of the ship, you've attained a certain amount of honor for this.
Then squadron is 14 to 60 ships.
Which is pretty big. Then there's
Systems
Systems
for,
Force, which
yep.
is led by a Commodore,
Then your fleet,
which is led by an Admiral.
and then sector group, which they don't say it's led by a grand admiral. They do say a high admiral, but the Empire had 12 grand admirals. Obviously, we don't get this because Thrawn isn't in this.
It does. I do like that they imply something equivalent, though. Also, the future growth of the Army. It's important that this represents a baseline. Only 8% of Army units are below their order of battle strength for reasons other than combat attritions, while nearly 15% are above. This is based on the assumption of continued explosive growth in the military. So, yeah, the Empire is rapidly building up its army. Also, again, more organization charts, which, again, is very lovely. They didn't need to do this, but they did, and it's really nice.
Then you have your combat artillery.
Yes, artillery is something that I it's not shown that often actually in Star Wars. I think they low-key show it in the Battle of Hoth a little bit.
Well, break down for me,
It's
what
used
is,
for naval gunnery.
because they're showing the image of that uh is it the E-web blaster that's being set up?
Yeah.
Is that considered artillery?
Um I personally wouldn't consider it artillery myself because it's more of a heavy weapons platform.
Yeah,
It's more akin to a machine gun. Although, given the
they,
ordnance it can spew, you could hypothetically argue it's something akin to a Zambarak, which is a very light cannon that the Persians would actually put on camels. Like, you would actually put, like, it's a little swivel gun that would fire little 1 pound cannonballs that
oh
they would
shit,
mount on camels.
they showed the anti-vehicle laser cannon, the one from Episode 5, as
I would
a,
argue that is artillery because that's an anti-armor weapon.
and they say it was introduced in the Clone Wars.
Yeah. There's also the tri-tracker.
The grandfather gun, surface-to-surface bombardment cannon.
Anti-orbital ion cannon, which you actually do see in Hoth. That's what I was thinking of.
Yep, that's what that's the ion cannon. The anti-infantry battery, which is the
I like how they mention it's
other,
to suppress native population on low-tech worlds.
yeah, which is to which is the other, I guess, artillery piece you see in Episode 5.
There's the field missile launcher.
Heavy anti-vehicle weapon, turbo lasers.
Turbo lasers we've seen.
Then, then they go into the support weapons.
It's a very crunchy book near the end, but it's really nice. There's also an equivalent Rebel Alliance book, if I recall.
Yes.
And that one's also really good.
Ion cannons, missile launchers, the DEMP gun.
Yep. Sometimes, basically, it's an anti-droid weapon. It's a stun. It's essentially a stun gun.
Wait, so we were on Tatooine during a routine shakedown. One place out in the desert, some moisture farmers' work droids wouldn't let us into Search's evaporator station. Senior officer didn't take that too well. The droids wouldn't move aside, so he turned to me. I'm the dem gunner, and told me to juice him.
The first setting ionizes a droid system. Sparks a bit, but it can operate normally in a moment. We never really used that setting. If you need to stop a droid, that doesn't really put him out of action, it only makes him pause a bit. Second
Yeah,
setting's more useful. Stuns a droid like a blaster set on stun does to a human. Knocks him out for some time. Long enough to do whatever we came for. The third setting. That's the fun one. Blows them completely. Not only does it short their power plant, but it gets the motivator and burns the memory too. It's supposed to be used to stun heavily armored droids and stop ones that are obviously threatening. Well, I felt so threatened by these work droids, I set the DMP on Fry and let him have it. It stopped them all right. Something burned out so badly in one of them it actually caught fired. I'd never seen anything like that before. Burning droids pretty spectacular, I found out.
yes, the other thing, they capitalized droid throughout the entire thing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The Caspel projector launcher. These are these are your gas weapons.
Yay!
So,
There's no equivalent. Of fuck. What's the rules of war?
Geneva
There's no
Convention.
Geneva Convention. Why am I missing that?
So the options you can use are die, which are marking terrain, which, funnily enough, shell die was actually used for aiding in targeting. There are smoke, T238, which is nausea and incapacity, essentially tear gas, cryoban, which is a freezing one, plank gas, which is acidic, Bothan stun spores, and Fex M3, nerve gas. Death! The Caspal has bad operation in certain circles, but only among troops that don't keep their weapons clean. They claim it jams and ignites the canister while it's in the launcher. True, that's happened once or twice. The most notorious time was the accident that killed Imperial General Azarin on Lafra. But the investigation proved it was a trooper's negligence, not his weapon, that was at fault. No, the Caspal isn't a sensitive piece of equipment. Just watch out for dirt caught around the canister priming pin and make sure it's kept clean. That's what can cause the launcher to jam. Then, sure, the canister's been primed and it'll go off when it's jarred. Basically, though, the weapon is simple and reliable. It's not as flashy as a blaster, but it fills a big need in small unit tactics. And the Caspal doesn't have as many quirks as other projectile launchers I've seen. Seems it takes forever to affix the grenade adapter, but it always feels that way when you need grenade fire quick. Of course, when a fire team takes a Caspal on a mission, you have to plan smoke or chemical support ahead of time. Takes only the special canisters designed for it and standard issue grenades, nothing else. If you didn't bring a Caspal load you need, you can't substitute ammo from the other weapons. I like how he tried to downsell how
How shit it is.
Thermal detonators, heavy repeating blasters, that's the E-Web.
Yeah. Yep. As Squirrel Killer, as Canadian name disheartened, the galaxy far, far away has no checklist.
Comments on the E-Web by Imperial Trooper Radon. E-Web's a good gun, but it's not built to be fired by one man. Oh yeah, you can do it, but you'll wish you could do it better. That's what happened to me when we were at Keskin. We fell back after our last firefight, and I took up a position outside of town. Ovan and I set up the E-Web and settled in for the night. We were waiting for our scouts to report back, until a night fire went off and lit us up. Ovan was hit and fell against the Exoan. So I dived for the power unit to keep it from tumbling down the hill. That pack is heavy, and if it goes, it rips the power couplers out with it. A few shots winged the E-Web, but couldn't knock it out. The rebels ran past and saw me down over at the power pack. They thought I was hit and kept going. The other E-Web, somewhere to my right, exploded a minute later. It's real dangerous when the cryo cooler gets hit. Rebels were pouring out of the jungle by the time I got the power coupling straightened out and opened fire. Without a second man, it's very hard to shoot an E-Web. There's no fire control, you can't nurse your supply or watch the cooler, and the gun is awkward to aim. My shooting accuracy was cut in half, and I barely took out enough rebels to chase them under cover. I never want to try to fire an E-Web by myself again if I can help it, especially not in a firefight.
I like that as a cryo cooler. It's basically just a Maxim gun.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, and force pikes, which were first introduced in the Bagali Uprising.
Yeah.
Subtle there.
I believe they actually, I think, isn't the Imperial Guard actually ceremonially armed with them? Like, they don't use them
Yes,
except,
yes,
they
they
use
say.
them more as, like, personal gear.
Yes. That personal bodyguards also carry force pikes. All these are primarily ceremonial, except for the Royal Guard, in whose hands a pike is more dangerous than anyone would care to find out.
Which is fun.
You then have proton mines, sharpshooter blasters.
That's the rifle you're thinking of. It's a blaster carbine.
Yeah. And then pictures from the movies.
Yep. Which I really like that they took still frames of and like looked back to back on these. Also, Macquarie art again. Oh, I love that A-wing like dashing by that AT-AT.
That's a snowspeeder.
Snowspeeder, thank you. It looks like an A-wing because of the wing shape to me.
Yeah, kind of.
Incompleted stations. Hey! I love when they show non-X-wings. It's pretty great. Nice close-up of the Imperial Guard helmet.
That actually is a very cool helmet.
I really do like the helmet.
It must have been a bitch to wear, though.
Oh god, yeah. The visibility is terrible. Hey, look, it's the old people that Emperor Palpatine pretended to listen to.
Now it's time for the Special Forces.
Yep. They have a bunch of them.
Stormtrooper.
We've already kind of talked about them, so I think we'll be Wherever the Empires go, stormtroopers will be found acting as ship's troops aboard Star Destroyers, accompanying visiting dignitaries and maintaining garrisons on troublesome worlds. Stormtroopers are equally designed to fight in space and on ground. All Star Destroyers carry a division of these motherfuckers.
No Imperial Ambassador, Grand Moff, Admiral, or Governor General goes anywhere in public without an honor guard of at least 10 stormtroopers.
Yeah.
The elite armor unit, formed in the closing stages of the Clone Wars from armor units of the Old Republic, Hell's Hammers have served in the Empire in a large number of actions in the Outer Rim territories. Hell's Hammers.
Which they show. Here's I love their suit design as well. Do you like how
I
they
need.
wear robes?
Holy shit! They put this in detail.
Yeah. Yes, they did.
They added to this.
Yes, they did. They describe what the Hammers are known for, what they've done. They are an elite force within the Army. When at full strength, the regiment consists of 3 battalions. They talk about its organizations. They actually give a short story about what they do. They then go a little bit more on some of the regimental strength. And then they move on to the Scimitar Assault Wing, or the White Death. It's the best known wing of the Quinjet Fleet. They are referred to because, unlike most TIE bombers, it refers to the light-colored bodies of their TIE bombers. So they have a slightly unique paint scheme.
So they just made an entirely unique.
Ace-wing. Which is actually, remember, since they're basing it on a lot of the word, this is similar to the flying circus of the Kaiser Germany.
They even have a logo. Strike to kill.
Yes, they do.
Oh, and they ended up being with Thrawn.
Yes, they do. They're pretty infamous. Also, this was written before Thrawn, so unironically, it came from here. And Chapter 12, Recruitment, Training, and Indoctrination.
Yay!
So,
So the recruiting drive shall be directed on worlds known to be loyal to our glorious Emperor. Worlds formed for the Imperial Corps still provide the best, most able recruits. They shall form the officer pool. Their beliefs in genetic superiority make them ideal suited for combat.
yes.
The next are those that border the Imperial Corps. Here, life in the Imperial Service can be presented as a glamorous and exciting, a chance for candidates to improve themselves and develop lifelong careers in the Imperial forces. Other valid areas should be frontier worlds. Primitive worlds should continue to be scouted for recruits as they make for excellent assault soldiers. Their lack of technological knowledge is more than offset by the ease in which they can be indoctrinated. These are highly expendable and should color your recruitment accordingly.
You like how you see a little bit of maybe where where the Warhammer 40K got some of their stuff from too? You think they might have at least looked at the Imperial Sourcebook for some ideas?
They could have. I have a
I don't
feeling
think
that
they're ripping it off though. Like I'm not saying
no,
they
they're not.
are. What they did was they probably took a look and got some ideas from it.
I have a feeling it
Because
was
West
a
End
bit.
Games Star Wars actually was pretty popular. Like by IP owned games, this one actually was reasonably popular. It's why they made so many splats.
Let's say, however, suspected rebel spies should be encouraged to join the ISB informed immediately.
Yeah.
Policy of assignment. To less intelligence recruits, the infantry division should appear to be glamorous, making their transfer to the infantry seem a logical and beneficial progression.
To the less intelligent recruits, the infantry division yeah, I like how they
Yeah.
call them less intelligent.
We're making McNamara's men right now.
Indoctrination. While the loyalty of a recruit should be high, initial training shall serve to further increase loyalty. The anarchic viewpoint of the Rebel Alliance shall be stressed, along with the Rebels' disregard for law and order. The Empire is the only force in the galaxy which actively promotes stability and peace. Our troops are engaged in a noble crusade against the forces of disorder, and every trooper should be aware of this. By the end of basic training, recruits should willingly die for the Empire. And they talk more about the Imperial Army, basic training. When you join the Imperial Army, you will find it's hard to begin with. You most likely won't be used to sharing your room with 6 or 7 other people. You won't be used to taking orders, and you'll probably find that drill is something you hate. You might find it a pain to look after your equipment and weapons. The effort that you have to spend maintaining your blaster may seem like a waste of time, but the discipline you undergo now will be beneficial in the long term. It will help you remember that everything we teach you during basic is done for a reason. Essentially, they're explaining the psychology behind basic, where they essentially break you down and force you via very light trauma bonding because, you're getting screamed at and you're getting stressed out with your guys. Which I think is kind of neat. They're writing it slightly from the point of view of a propagandist.
Actually, yeah, it says it's coming from the Imperial Army, a guide to Army training for new recruits. And then they actually then have the Navy portion. It is the Army which really wins the wars. We are the ones who go in and capture the ground, garrison troublesome systems, and deal with the rebels face to face.
Which is probably a sign that the Navy is seen as more glamorous, because that's actually them trying to go
Yeah,
to war with because remember, the Old Republic emphasized the Navy. That's them
yeah.
going to war against the Old Republic's concepts to try to fight against it. That's actually really clever. While the Navy is not entirely composed of vac heads, it's often remote. Hey, they mentioned Rythal Academy.
Hmm.
Nice.
I feel like then in the Imperial Navy section, um,
Oh no, they try to sell them, but like they're trying
yeah,
because they
no,
need more army. They have
oh, that's
Navy,
right.
fine. They need more army men. That,
Oh no, no. Then there's the Navy section where they shit on the Army. Army troops can never maintain close unit level teamwork for extended periods in the heat of battle, when individual initiative becomes paramount for survival. In the worst of situations, a trooper knows the odds are with him. A soldier in combat is far more likely to be injured than killed. In contrast, naval crewmen know that in the worst situation, not only will one die, but everyone in his section or ship is likely to die along with him.
which is true. If you aren't able to do damage control, everyone dies on the ship. I mean, there are life pod evacuation methods, probably. Probably. I mean, let's be fair. You do at least want some form of that, just so you can keep some of the experienced people, so you can do more evil things, right?
Mhm.
Then
And
again,
they go,
Palpatine does seem like the type of guy who would intentionally sabotage the life support vessels, just so he can laugh as they all die, panicking when they realize their mistake.
they bring up the branches of the Navy, the line branch, the flight branch, fleet support branch, and support service branch.
Yep. And they actually ended off with first flight, which is just the feeling of being a TIE fighter pilot.
Which is fucking hell because you have no shields.
Oh god, no, you're dying like a frog in a fucking blender.
Oh, and you know what? So then they go to the credits, and
The galaxy
each
keeps getting bigger.
well, no, each section was written differently.
Oh yeah, they had different people. I mean, not all the time, but enough of them. Yeah,
They credit by chapter.
that's actually a good idea.
You know what? I feel like this also because they had a miniature game.
Yep, they had several actually. Assault on
Well,
Hoth
actually,
is just their most well-known one.
I actually looked up. The miniature game was released in 1996, so in no way was this made. But it feels so much like the Imperial Sourcebook would fit. Like you want to design your own uh, Stormtrooper regiment? Here's all you need.
Yep. So that is the Imperial Sourcebook by West End Games.
Actually, I do like the in the back blurb.
Oh
It
yeah,
says
let
information
me show
for
that before
yeah.
I head back to ourselves.
It says information for movie fans and game players alike on one of the most evil institutions ever portrayed in heroic fiction. Look at the Imperial power structure, details on Commodore Imperial intelligence. So yeah, they were not just designing this to be for the role playing, but for the Star Wars fan in general.
And it really shows in its work. It really does show in its work. Um, it has been a decent while since I have ever actually shown remote passion in Star Wars. I'm not kidding when I say that because of how consistently terrible, malicious, and stupid Disney has become, I can't even really enjoy just plugging off and ignoring it. Mainly because the more you try to look at the old stuff, the more they try to insidiously sneak in their new garbage because they know it fucking doesn't sell. Um, Funnily enough, a really good example of that. Like, remember all those mods that fans kept trying to make for a bunch of the old Star Wars games, and then they kept throwing in Disney garbage into it?
To be fair, in some cases they throw in the characters and the ships. Um, I'm okay personally with some of the ships,
Well, yeah, because it's mostly like some of their ships are legitimately just stolen from Ralph McQuarrie's dumpster, so
but
they look
at
all
least,
right. The
yeah,
problem is it's what they're tied to.
yeah. I,
Oh,
I mean,
it,
again, the ships they sometimes they look just enough like okay, yeah, I can see this being used.
Also, yes, individual chapter credits do put pressure on the writers to pull their weight. That is actually it is a bit cruel, but also a good concept. I do like that concept, Squirrel Killer. Overall, I would say this is an amazing book. If you
Mhm.
genuinely, truly like Star Wars, I would recommend trying to find a copy of it.
And by the way, this was the first edition. They made three others,
They made 3 editions because it was just that popular.
and
Um, I do believe you can find it on the RPG drive-through. I stupidly forgot to provide a link, but I do genuinely recommend, even though West End Games is a defunct company, try to get your hands on a copy of the PDF. This is if you really do like Star Wars and you've only seen like the movies, or if you really want like technical guides or manuals and shit. There are you don't need to get every book from West End Games, but Imperial Sourcebook, they have a source book for the Rebel Alliance, and they also have what are called the Galaxy Guides, and a lot of the EU shit that you see in the books, like a lot of the stuff that you see in the books, either came from here or they talked with the writers from the books as they were being written, because that's another thing.
like they have a Dark Empire source book.
Because
I'm
what they
looking
do is
through.
they actually talk with the sci-fi writers that wrote the EU books in particular, and they
Yeah,
made up their own. Which that's something I do have to point out. Quite a few of the things from the expanded universe comes from West End Games because they were genuinely massive fans of Star Wars, and it's to the point where they actually did consult with George Lucas occasionally. They are genuinely good.
like
Now,
like
I
I'm looking at the Dark Empire source book, and there's the introduction is this sort of treatise from the New Republic of why to fight the Empire, and they detail out the signatures of all the different groups. Like, the human ones write their names out, but like
Well, no, they
Borsk's
wouldn't. They
Phala,
shouldn't write their. I actually disagree with that because they shouldn't have to write their names out. That was something George Lucas was very particular about. He didn't like the concept of paper being in Star Wars. He wanted it to always be at least digital.
still,
I don't I do like it in the point of view of like a cultural point of view. That's actually kind of a
yeah.
cool idea. It is a very minor knock, and you have to be very persnickety to not like that. Um,
They even stat out Admiral Akbar.
Yes, they do. They stat out a lot of characters. They've also statted out Thrawn in his book because he has his own source book. But yeah, old Star Wars toys aren't selling anymore. That's because the collector's market is collapsing. The only people who want them are man children. No offense, man children, but like, there's a point where you gotta stop consuming your crack addiction. Says the man child saying this, in his fat chair.
No, I will not stop buying the plastic crack. I
You'll
need it.
you'll not stop buying the black tar heroin laced with fentanyl.
No, child, I will buy more miniatures.
I thought you were going to go with him going, no, no, child, I'll continue taking my black tar heroin laced with fentanyl.
I'm now imagining actually Patrick as a as an Imperial moth.
Grand Moff
N-
Tomlin.
No, rebels. You will go to the trash compactor.
No. Enjoy Oblivion, Stalker. Blows them up with a Star Destroyer. Actually, you
And
totally could. He'd fit as a Moff. Oh my god. He actually does fit as a Moff. He has the right mixture of arrogance, delusion, and moral justification. Like, he fits. If you rough out his edges, and actually he would work as a really good, like, as a really good supporting antagonist in a book, I think.
you rebel scum. No, rebel scum. It is you who will suffer.
Enjoy Oblivion. For stalkers. No, enjoy Oblivion, scum.
It fits. But yeah, no.
But no, like, this book, Squirrel Killer actually openly confesses they don't like Star Wars, which is fine. But yes, even if you don't like Star Wars, I do seriously recommend getting this book. It is helpful if you ever want to play in something like this. You can use it in so many other, like, generic sci-fi settings. You could use it for 40K. They actually do a pretty good job at explaining how an intelligence agency might work.
Intelligence agencies in Warhammer.
Yeah, but
It's
you know what
there's
I
the
mean.
enemy. There's the enemy. Just die.
But it can help you with, say, for example, like the Administratum point of view, or like an
You know what?
Inquisitor point of view, if you
You
want
know
to
how I
make it
realized
more
this could work?
procedural.
Helldivers RPG.
Yeah, if you want to do a Helldivers RPG, just take the West End Star Wars game, just turn into that.
Somebody do that. They'll make money.
I mean, you'd have to get the permissions. I don't know who currently squats on the rights of the game design, so you'd have to get permission from that. But no, I highly recommend this book. It's an amazing book. Uh, it genuinely is amazing. At no point I felt bored reading this. It is one of the few things that has actually revived my actual passion for Star Wars a little bit. Not because I
Oh,
don't expect it to get good. Like, it's never going to be. It's dead. It's dead, Jim.
oh. Then
But
here's what will help.
this is
Here's what
this is something that's great.
here's what will help bring it down. The trailer for the Acolyte apparently releases tomorrow.
I fucking love Star Wars.
If you see the poster, they're trying to do it like a lightsaber with like blood effects coming off it, and
Which is supposed to imply a red lightsaber, because
which points to the graphics design that is a nice graphic design. But I just look at that as
it's a Saw movie trailer poster. That's the problem.
this looks like something that would have come out of the late 2000s Star Wars.
This feels like something I would have seen in a Dark Horse comic. Like, let's say Dark Horse had a limited Star Wars run, and you needed a comic cover from like 1997 or maybe 2005. Like, if Dark Horse had the rights for Star Wars briefly near the end
They
of
did.
Lucas, it feels like a Dark Horse cover,
It
which
would fit with Legacy in some respects.
props. That's a props. It's not a bad poster design. I mean, hell, the Yuzhan Vong legitimately is from 40K, essentially. Like, not really, but they fit much more. Like, if you told me they were a particularly twisted brand of Dark Eldar, or affiliated
Oh,
with the
that
Tyranids, or affiliated with Slaanesh.
100%, 100% Dark Eldar.
So going visually different, that's not necessarily wrong. The problem is, we know it's going to be garbage. We
It
know,
just
like, it legitimately. Uh, I think it's either the Acolyte or it's the other one. It is allegedly being filmed in California so they can get like $21 million off in tax breaks, which means that they can then now essentially try to escape around discriminatory hiring practices. So, it's not going to be good. I mean, none of it's going to be good. Even if you get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, the person that replaces her is not going to be good.
but it had its run.
It had its run, and like I said, you can just do what most people who actually still like Star Wars do. Disregard the Disney fan fiction that is essentially fictive and financial suicide for them, and just
And
look
make
at
your own.
Legends. No, just look at Legends. Just pick this. Just go back to Legends. Maybe discount a couple things you don't necessarily like, but honestly, it's not awful. And then just kind of make your own. Like, for example, I had an amazing time playing Edge of Empires. That was an amazing run, and I had a lot of fun playing a Rhodian mechanic.
I got an idea. Force-sensitive jizz musicians.
You can unironically do a force sensitive jizz musicians who are trying to, you could also do it like a Blues Brothers campaign where they're constantly trying to evade like the Jedi who are trying to capture them.
No, in this case, then you have Leia show up and try to kill them.
Or alternatively, if you have it take place during the Empire period, you have Inquisitors try to sneak up and try to snag him. Because I think they are a Legends concept as well. I'm a little rusty on that.
I hate. What would it be? What would be the right version of Illinois Nazi for them?
There's an alien race that I'm forgetting. No, the problem is they're not pathetic enough. There is a Star Wars race you can unironically use for it.
Which one?
I don't know because its name is eluding me. I was originally actually going to say the Chiss because they're also kind of self-narcissistic about themselves. Same with the Hutts, but they're kind of too notorious and not pathetic enough. Because that's kind of the point of the Illinois Nazi Party. They're pathetic. But no, I mean, if you wanted to do a Blues Brothers style,
do the Huck.
Yeah, the Huck. The Huck's fun. Another really fun idea you could do in West End Star Wars is, oh no, Compnor's doing an auditing on your business, but unfortunately your corporate executive boss died and you have to pretend he's alive. In a week, I originally called that scenario Weekend at Jabba's, where Jabba dies after getting strangled and you have to fake him being alive so that you can survive the nightmare and escape with some of his fortune.
Yeah. Oh, also, Sonic, look out! The Empire's after our jizz.
No, Disney was after their jizz. They actually changed it.
What did they change it to?
No one cares. It's similar to how they kept trying to remove references to slavery because they don't understand that it legitimately modern movements forget that slavery as a term doesn't just refer to the specific institution that was involved in the triangle trade. And also, by accidentally retconning slavery, you kind of accidentally make the bad guys look better.
Well, I mean, they destroy planets, they murder, they genocide millions of people, but at least they aren't slavers.
My favorite moment is whenever they accidentally write an antagonist and they're actually better than the protagonist, like morally superior and actually better people. Because they don't understand that their idea of a protagonist is a sociopathic monster and it says so much about them and why you should never fucking listen to a thing they say.
Which reminds me, technically, at the end of Disney Star Wars, there is no Republic. The Empire's gone. There's now technology out there to build Starship Death Stars. The Jedi are completely gone. Palpatine has taken over Rey's body because, well, Adam Driver fell to his emotions, sacrificed himself to save Palpatine, which, well,
because he thought it was Rey still. Because
yeah.
What happened was they did a dumb retcon. My guess is that all the Jedi scene, which was actually. Oh, do you want to know why the I am all the Sith and all the Jedi thing happened? It's specifically, I think, because of Endgame.
Yep. And because of the complete failure of the New Republic, Republicanism is dead in Star Wars. So guess what? Disney ends with an entire warlord period.
Well, that's pretty fitting, given that
Congratulations, as the Hutts, Chiss, Trandoshans, who else?
The Rhodian crime families.
The Black Sun, the Pikes.
Don't forget the Grisk. because their version of the Vong are still there.
Former First Order people, probably radicalized members of the New Republic that are now just ruthlessly killing anybody that's not them. Human supremacists.
A relative of Admiral Akbar who has created a Mon Calamari isolationist state.
Quarians. Who else would be out there murdering people?
Oh, don't forget the
The
Twi'lek anti-human genocide country. Because yes, that happened in the EU. There was a mass alien rebellion that attempted to exterminate humanity. It was led by the Twi'lek.
the Diversity League or something like that.
No, like that's an actual thing from the EU canon, if I
No.
remember.
Oh, don't forget the Killick. The Killick could come back.
Oh, don't forget Human Inquisition 2, Electric Boogaloo.
The Coruscant Alskani conflicts could happen again.
A relic of the Rakanan Infinite Empire awakens and actually recreates it.
And you know what? From the supernatural encounters, the immortal gods of the Sith emerge, which are just Lovecrafty entities. Enjoy fighting the King in Yellow.
Oh, and last but not least, Palpatine comes back. Why? Because the dark side allows me to do whatever the fuck I want.
And then you know what? The Daleks.
Yeah, fuck it. Well, at this point, they technically could do that. It would be terrible, but they could. Oh, you forgot the Xenomorphs because they're also in the.
Are they?
Also, yes, you see a couple of Xenomorphs in the background shots of a couple of official licensed stuff.
I know E.T.
I believe there is one reference to a couple of references to Xenos in the comics.
Then you have the Predator. You have the Ciceruk, the Ethians.
Yeah, let's just say the Covenant and the precursors are there. Fuck it, who cares?
Fuck it, the Flood's now here.
Fuck it, who cares?
The Flood, throw in the Makers as well.
No one's ever really
the
gone.
Necromorphs. The
Necromorphs are there. Hey,
I want the Necromorphs versus the Death Troopers.
No, and don't forget the Subnautica with the horrible virus on that planet. You know, the Kiari virus that can wipe out entire sections of galaxy quickly.
And the Grey Goo. Let's just throw in a Grey Goo.
Let's throw in Grey Goo. Let's throw in John Carpenter's The Thing.
That technically exists. I think Mignol's counted as that. Duck Dodgers?
Yeah, don't forget Howard the Duck is also canon.
Howard the Duck. Which means Marvel's canon.
Okay, so you have Darth Vader fighting Thor and getting instantly jobbed. Well, now I feel exactly as Star Wars is dead. But yeah, like I mentioned, I highly recommend Imperial Sourcebook. Seriously, I very stupidly forgot to put that in the description. I will actually make sure to pin a comment that can tell you where you can get a copy of it. We also have a Discord. Feel free. The Discord invite link should still work for those who are new. And last but not least, like, subscribe, and all that. This was a 3-hour odyssey, but it only really felt like 2 hours, which I think is a testament to how good that book is. and as you said, unlimited power. See you all.